Boom. Ladies and gentlemen, what's up, everybody? It's the EDGEVOICE STREAMCAST. Hey, with the royal wave from Fryda Wolff. Hey, this is Fryda Wolff right here. Yeah, she's got, we went through a few background choices and settled on this one. I don't know, what's that called behind you?
Fan art?
Well, yeah, I mean fan art, but do they title it? Because it's quite an interesting juxtaposition.
I usually do when I'm in something that people produce fan art for, I do like a little swipe for a while of like, oh, that's cool, and it all gets saved to my desktop wallpapers folder, and then I usually stop once it's majority porn. With Loba, that happened real quick, but I did get some good fan art before I had to tap out.
Now, when you say majority porn, are you saying 51%, or is this more like 97% here?
This is my life's accomplishment. Loba was #1 on Pornhub for a week, I understand. That's it. I've peaked. I can retire.
Yeah.
No other accolade, no other award will ever be as significant as being #1 on Pornhub for a week.
Loba has been with us for a month or so, correct? No, a couple of months, right? Has it been?
As my agent likes to say, every day is now Blur's day. And I'm like, yeah, every day is the day that ends in day. When did Loba came out? May at some point?
Was the, Apex fans, when was the season 5 premiere that Loba was thrust into our lives? May 12th. Okay. So we're looking at about 6 weeks with Loba so far. And yeah, so that's got to be an interesting timeline for you because right around March 19th or so, 17th or 19th, we have our lockdown here in Cali. And then, I don't know, 2 months after that, Loba comes onto the scene and suddenly you're in conversation much more. I know that you're not a social media person. So has it really kind of gotten into your subconscious yet?
Loba was actually kind of an easy launch for me because I did, and I don't know if it has to do with lockdown or whatever, but because Fryda, didn't do any press at all for this. I didn't do any like interviews with Respawn or any podcasts, so there was really zero push coverage exposure. You hear the dog in the background. Push coverage exposure of me. So I saw people get, fanatical about the character, but I was left out of it, which is my dream come true. Because I do the work to do acting, but being seen and famous is like a different job, which doesn't necessarily pay checks anyway, unless you do the convention circuit, which I don't do. So it was actually like a really easy, smooth launch for me, because I was cut out of it, which is awesome. So just like I saw traffic on my webpage go up because there was probably a lot of like,
yeah.
But beyond that, piece of cake.
And those exact words too.
I mean, I get that a lot. Like, I have a Google alert for myself, which I don't recommend for anyone who cares about their mental health, but I do it because nobody tells voice actors if we make the final cut for a thing or if we were cut from a thing, whatever.
Right.
We're in charge of our own stupid PR. So whenever someone posts a review or a forum post or whatever with my name in it, I usually get the hit for it. And like, I saw one recently I've been doing a podcast with Serial Box. They do like bite-sized audiobook entries, like you get a chapter at a time.
Yeah.
And I've been doing one for Jessica Jones. And I got a hit the other day where in the write-up they're like, who is Fryda Wolff? You probably haven't heard of her, but then I'm like, thanks for making that important. To be fair, Serial Box usually hires celebrities. Like they did their first audiobook was Orphan Black, and they had Tatiana Maslany, if I'm saying her name right, do it. But for me, who has nothing to do with the Jessica Jones franchise, I guess is fair. So
believe me,
I like it that way though.
Yeah,
I should just make that my stage name.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, WonderCon wants to welcome. It's gonna be doing 2 panels.
Yeah, I like it. Good luck finding my home address that way.
Yeah. Well, actually, Steve Martin had kind of a riff on that years ago. He was accepting a comedy award, and he started, he wanted to name people. I'd like to thank quite a few people for this award. First of all, my agent,
Perfect.
and then just kept naming. And that's the whole point is that a lot of this stuff that we get thrown at us, whether it's online or just in our ears sometimes, it's just this white noise that you come to expect because it's show business. But I don't have a Google alert for that reason because
Good for you.
yeah, well, I didn't know it existed, and now that I know, I now I know for sure I don't want one because I went through this in I think it was '04. I did a voice for a character in Final Fantasy VII, Sid Highwind, and I didn't know the power of anime. I didn't know just how rabid the fans are, and so I put the credit up on IMDb before they had officially announced the cast. And my agent called and says, "You really should take that down. They haven't announced the cast yet." Oh, I said, "Oh, okay. Nobody really cares about that, right?" She goes, "No, no. You'll see." And sure enough, I Googled just to make sure that, oh, nobody really cares. I found an 8-page message thread on who the hell is Chris Edgerly and why is he this character? They found, yeah, it was 8 pages. They found my old comedy club headshot. They put that up. This is what it looks like. They found my old demo, my commercial demo. This is what it sounds like. And it was just...
See, you're so lucky because you're a man, so typically they won't immediately take apart whether you're, whether...
Yeah, whether or not I'm, like, hot enough or... Yeah,
because, like, generally the first blockade is like, but would I put it inside her? And if the answer is no, they're like, immediately. So if you don't pass, the Turing sex test or whatever you want to call that.
That means does this mean I have to take down would I put it inside her.net? Should I go ahead and take that site down?
You know what? We have WikiFeet, so why not? Just keep going. The world is ending. Go nuts.
I didn't even know about WikiFeet till you brought that up.
All women whether they know or not, have an entry at WikiFeet, and I will always be bitter because mine was put up the day I had a pedicure, and look, I'm doing the best I can. So neither would they put it inside me or do it with my feet, which is fine because I wasn't offering in the first place. Just putting
right. Yeah. I, on the other hand, want to know if you'd put it inside me, and by God, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. No, and yeah, that just got clipped. That's going to show up on the feed pretty quickly. So we've established that you do not run sprinting towards the spotlight. You have we talked about this yesterday doing our tech test. We have, as voice actors, we have selective fame. And unless you court it online, we have selective fame so that you can go grocery shopping, you can be out and about and not worry about anybody snapping your picture. And then if you want, you go to these specific enclaves like conventions, and they will give you all the adulation you want, and you can go back home. The internet has changed a bit of that, but again, it's a voluntary thing. Like I am chasing a certain amount of recognition because I like doing the STREAMCAST. I like interviewing people. I like connecting with fans of the game. So I have to, by a certain metric, try to get numbers. And the minute that becomes no fun for me, I'm done. I'm out with it. Whereas you and a few of the other Legends actors too aren't really aggressively into saying, hey, I do this.
Well, being famous doesn't have to be part of your business strategy unless you want it to be. So something I figured out very quickly in VO is that you have to define for yourself what success is and what you consider is I am successful now. Because that can mean any number. Is it how much money you're making? Is it the level of visibility of the projects that you're being cast for? Is it how famous you are as an individual? Is it how many Twitter followers you have? On and on and on. Is it how long your lines of convention are? And I decided, I am a successful voice actor if I'm paying all my bills and have enough left over for savings. That's it. That's my floor, personally. The rest is gravy, and I could give a poopy-de-boo. So,
no, you can curse if you want. This is an 18-plus
show. Give a shit. I just don't. The other stuff is not interesting, important, or necessary. It doesn't add to my career. It doesn't feed my soul. None of it. And being famous doesn't, I don't get checks from famous to Fryda Wolff for being famous. It doesn't work like that. So fame has to be tweeting doesn't pay unless it's a sponsored thing because someone paid you X amount of dollars to say X thing on your social media, or going to conventions, when you go to conventions, you are now spending time out of your life that you will never get back, living in airports, in layovers, in late flights, in hotels, away from your family, away from your life. You're not doing auditions, you're not doing acting, you're not performing, you're not building new relationships with clients, you're collecting fan money. And I understand, like you and I both have, you know, all of our colleagues, if not most, except for me because I'm special, go to conventions and stuff, because you can make in 2 to 3 days what you would make in a week. So people are looking at the math, and I get that. But all the time lost in like airports and hotels and the spent time not acting, I would rather spend at home during that week doing the acting. Like, the way I frame it is like, I want to get better at acting. That's the skill set I want to build. I don't want to get better at signing autographs. That is not a skill set.
Yeah.
So that's where I stand on it. So I like, the only reason voice actors do anime is for the fan money at conventions, because hourly anime is not enough money to live on.
No.
You can't eat on it. Sorry. No. But if you collect enough anime fandom, then you pay your rent with doing conventions. So again, our job is very interesting. It can be whatever you want it to be. And I try not to get into it with other actors, because there is some degree of like Kool-Aid drinking, cult thinking, brainwashing, where I've had conversations with other voice actors where I have to just peace out, because either their agents or amongst themselves have told each other, like, you got to have your social media, dude, you got to have a stream, you got to build those numbers. Like, my God, I know a couple of voice actors who are just traumatized because like they got recast for someone more famous. But I'm like, but for the thing you got recast for, you booked another job to fill the time, right? Right? Like, you were able to continue to pay your bills, right? So why does this matter? Because you get fame obsessive, and again, you have redefined for yourself what success means, and maybe these people are beating themselves up because they don't have more follower counts than someone else. I don't know, like, comparison is the thief of joy, blah 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 blah. So for me, it's been very easy to distance myself, because I know I don't enjoy that stuff,
right?
Or rather, I don't think it's worth my time.
Yeah. I made a decision with the stream that I do that it was going to be 20 hours a week or less, come hell or high water. It's roughly 10 to 12 hours a week of streaming, and it's about 5 or 6 hours a week of editing, and that's it, because I have a wife and kids, and I do have voiceover happening, and then I have another life. I like to exercise. I like to take a walk with a mask on, because we live in these times. And just in general, I know that if you're an artist, you can't really produce art that you can be proud of if you're not living a full life outside of making your art. You have to feed yourself. And so, yes, I have a lot of voiceover colleagues like you do that are on a plane every weekend. At least before the pandemic hit, they were on a plane all the time. And I come from the stand-up world where I toured for 10 years. So I know what it's like to be on a plane a lot. I know what it's like to forget what city you're in. And I know what it's like to long for the solace of your own bed instead of this hotel bed. And so I've not done many conventions. I think aside from Comic-Con 3 or 4 times, I've done about 2 or 3 other conventions, and that's it. Because I got married and I had kids, and I said, I'm not going to be away from them no matter what. The only exception was this year. I was going to do a convention in St. Louis in May, and I was going to take my wife with me, and our kids were going to stay with the grandparents, and we were going to make it a date, a weekend date, and it was going to be a little vacation with a little work, and I was going to do 2 or 3 conventions, and that was it. And now I've discovered that they do have virtual cons. So if you want to sit right there in your chair, put on your headset, you can do it. Of course, you're not going to get paid a fee to do it, but you could sell merch and things like that. So there's different levels to doing it, but I understand where you're coming from, because if you're not enjoying what you're doing, eventually the money needs to be really, really good to fill that hole.
Well, your trajectory over, like, everyone's trajectory over the course of your lifetime should always be less work, more money, less work, more money, less. And if at any time you're backsliding the opposite direction, you have to fix it. Yeah. Because then you can't stop rolling down that avalanche the wrong way. So, I mean, like, there are voice actors I know who like are known to do majority conventions. because they can. Because also they like, that's a whole other thing. We're like older people who came up in like the era of broadcast residuals, which for me is like talking about Game of Thrones, an era when dragons existed and were everywhere, which I believe is complete mythical poppycock. But those people who've sort of established themselves and don't have to do arduous salt mine backbreaking actual VO can just go to a convention once in a while, make their money, pay off their multiple mortgages, and come back home.
Yeah.
Must be nice.
We're I've got a foot in both worlds because I am lucky enough to be on something that does pay broadcast residuals, but I know that eventually, on a long enough timeline, everything is going to be new media. Everything is going to be, for those of you watching at home, playing the home game, new media is everything that is not your TV. So when you watch something on your phone, it's a new media. When you watch something on the internet, when you stream something, it's new media. And the residuals are not paid the same way. It's streaming, and it's a different formula. And hopefully our union will keep fighting hard for us so that we can make a living doing this, because the new media residuals aren't quite paid the same way. And so, yes, you're right. My uncle used to tell me this. If you're going to work, and if you're going to be thinking, make sure you think smart and you work smart. Hey. So when you say less work, more money, yeah, that's working smart.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be fast. It's just like, make sure your trajectory is going in that direction.
Yeah.
At all times, and resist any attempt to like push you back down to work harder for less money.
Yeah.
I know that's asking a lot in today's economy, but try.
Yeah, exactly. Well, this is the thing that we talk about sometimes on the stream. People will ask me, how do I get into voiceover? How do I get into this kind of acting? How do I overcome these obstacles? Do you?
I'm kind of proud of it, because my stupid little, there's a link on my page. There's a bunch of links in my menu on my website, FrydaWolff.com. If you don't spell right, you'll never find it, but you'll find it eventually. Anyway, there's a how to become a voice actor page because, and I will regularly get Google alerts because I'll see people posting that like in other places randomly, like game audio forums or Reddit or whatever. I'm like, oh, that's nice. I'm glad it's known for that. I tried, like I compiled a list of things like teachers and articles and videos and everything, like things that I personally have vetted, people I've personally worked with, or things that I genuinely think worked for me or for other people. Like, it's not like I don't get paid for any of those links.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would go to my page. I don't know.
Well, it's good advice. I will start sending people to FrydaWolff.com. I already send people to D. Bradley Baker's page, iwannabeavoiceactor.com.
I linked him, yeah.
Yeah.
He's so good at that.
He's got every conceivable question, but I like to hear from someone else's point of view as well, especially in your case, being a female in voice acting. Sometimes you may have to run into obstacles that D won't run into, or D, the younger D, before he became the God amongst mortals that he is in the voice acting world. He would never claim that, but let's face it, D's pretty amazing. There are a lot of things that people don't understand about the business side of it, and they all start with the same thing. Well, my friends tell me I can do a lot of cool voices. It's like, hey, that's a great start. But in addition to learning the craft of acting and all that, learning how to not just land an agent, but how to relate to your agent so that you're not a pain in the ass, but they still know you exist. Learning how to handle your money when you're making it. All of these things. A lot of people don't ever get that kind of training.
So there is some stuff that was really intuitive and obvious to me that is not intuitive and obvious to other people, and I don't know what to blame it on. I know what to blame my good habits on. For me, I spent the first 12 years of adulthood working, quote, a real job in the gaming industry. I used to tell myself a lot of stories starting out in VO that like I was at a huge disadvantage because I wasn't a child actor and I didn't do community theater and I never went to like summer theater camps, so I probably suck. And then it turns out like my agents have said point blank, like, thank God you had a real job, because dealing with some of these actors, like, look, acting is not it's not like we're glorified clowns for hire. And if you start as like a child actor or something, maybe other people, adults, like managed things for you, manage your scheduling, your budgeting, your accounting, your time. And so you never develop those skills for yourself. For example, when I was working in development, for those who don't know, I spent the last 9 years as a sound designer, so I was at least sometimes partially involved in like casting and like co-directing and recording and like implementing VO and all this stuff. So I had like the other half of the sausage factory down. And so being on the receiving end is a whole different beast. But just stuff like I freelanced audio for a couple of years, and if you ever done freelance, you have to do things like file taxes. So when I started VO, it just made sense to me of like, I should keep an Excel where I write down the jobs I did, who I did them for, and how much money they said they'd pay me, because it turns out people don't want to pay you if they can get away with it.
Life lesson.
For example, so just like, so you all know, if you ever want to go into VO, and this is just again, you are a freelancer. If you are a voice actor, if you're an actor, you are a freelancer. So you have to apply the same business sense of a freelancer. I don't care that's artistic. You're a freelancer. I got the mic. Yeah, thank you. Sign of our times, which you can't see behind me, but like I was fiddling with my phone because I'm doing some work for, I guess I can't say which company, but they're doing a thing. This particular gaming company uses a lav mic. Lavs are the one, like the little,
the lavalier. Yeah.
Right. So I have to. They're having a courier service. Drive the mics all over town because they want a specific mic, and I have to put it on like a headband, like I'm working out in the 80s, and I look like a stupid anglerfish.
I've done that.
And I do that, right.
Yeah, the skull cap with the little lav hanging down.
They're letting me do it myself with like my own personal headband that, you know, like I wash my face at night with.
Okay.
Anyway, that mic just arrived. Sign of the times, guys.
Yep.
Anyway, so what I was going to say, so like, for example, in VO world, you have to wait. It's considered common courtesy to wait 90 days since the time you did the job before you can start asking, hey, where's my money? So you have to wait for a full 3 months to go by before it's considered good etiquette for you to be like, you gonna pay me?
Yeah, I don't wait that long.
Because like I pay my rent monthly and not every 3 months, so that's awkward. So that's fun. And like I've every time I've brought this up of like, well, you know, like I track my Excel sheet has the date that I did the thing, the project, the type of project it is, whether it's union or non-union, did I do it through my agency, and then when I get the check, I have to write down the check number, because if I don't, then it becomes a whole cluster of like, did I get paid appropriately, da 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 da. And it still shocks me when I talk to other actors. They're like, wow, you track your payments? That's crazy. And I'm like, you are not getting paid for half your jobs and you don't even know it.
Yeah.
Mind-boggling. You can be a great actor, but if you're a dumbass, it's going to be difficult for you.
Whenever I booked a gig as a stand-up, I'd write down where I was going to go, and everybody wrote things down back then, so we didn't have cell phones. And ever since I've gotten into voiceover, every job I've ever booked, every job I have ever booked existed in my book, in my day planner. I used to call it my big bad book of bookings, and I'd write it down. And every job has a check mark next to it, because when the check came in, I'd go back and find it and go, paid. And after a month or two, I'd go back and go, there's no check next to that one. Did I miss it? I'd ask, and then find out, oh, I missed it. All right, check. I didn't miss it. Oh, they haven't paid yet. And so the process begins. Although the difference is,
would love to not pay us. They would love to not pay us.
I don't wait 90 days. I start politely raising hell after. Well, each job is different. There's one job where regularly I expect it to take this long because that's just their process. 1 week after that deadline, I start asking, and then we stay on them, and then it gets solved. But yeah, the catch-22 of this has always been, oh, you're an actor. Okay, well, yeah, we usually pay you within 30 days, and the answer to that is, oh, you work at the production company. When do you get paid? Oh, every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks. That's what I thought. Yeah, so I guess we're just different.
You know what's funny? 9 times out of 10, for me, in my experience, the mom and pop shops, like the boutique, either whether like it's a small indie game developer or just like a small company, they pay really fast because they got to get it out the door and they have other things to do. It's like
Yeah.
the big mega companies or like the big animation studios, big game publishers where we just like fall through the cracks.
Yeah.
Because they do massive payrolls for thousands or tens of thousands of employees. And we're like, hello, independent contractor.
But
Shouldn't get paid.
this is what I learned. My wife is my CFO. My wife is Wonder Woman. She is an immigrant who taught herself English and brought her family over, all of that stuff. She's the most American person I know. I always tell her this. She's the most American person I know because she came here with nothing. She built everything up. She taught herself what she needed to learn. And here she is.
Hi.
You want to say hey real quick? This is Fryda Wolff.
Hi. Mucho gusto. You can tell her.
Pleasure to see you.
Hi.
Yeah. Okay. I got you? All right. Love you, baby. Yeah, she has this uncanny ability to walk in the room when I mention her name. She taught herself accounts payable and receivable and worked for an ad agency, for a mid-level ad agency. And she said, you know who didn't like to pay? Fortune 500 companies. And you would tell them, you guys are 3 months overdue. Yeah, I don't know. We'll get around to it. She said, because what were we going to do? We couldn't make them. We didn't have enough money to make them pay us. So, yeah, it happens. Sometimes the larger the company, like you say, sometimes the longer they will take to pay.
Yeah.
And
guys, this is the truth about VO. It's not all guts and glory. It's mostly about getting the damn check.
these are the ABCs, ladies and gentlemen. And yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of anime fans out there. And anime, if you did one anime job a day, 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year, it would not be enough. It would not be enough to live on in any city. Maybe somewhere out in Idaho, in militia country, maybe if you inherited a log cabin. But it does not. Yeah.
Living in your parents' shed, at best.
Yeah. Let's put it this way: if you were only living on anime money, you'd probably be cranking out a manifesto on your webpage right now. So yeah, most likely.
Rough.
Yeah, it's rough days. Well, then that leads me to the question: how did you go from being somebody who worked on that side of the glass to saying, you know, I would like to take a run at this acting, despite not having the pedigree?
I didn't have the pedigree. I was not a child actor.
Well, neither was I.
Yeah, but you know, like everybody. There was a great, I don't know, Radio Lab is an NPR story, and there was one. I think they were talking about personality or something, and I always get like catchphrases stuck in my mind. There's a sociologist who said, "We are the stories we tell ourselves." So if you tell yourself that X, Y, Z are impediments to you reaching your goal, then yeah, they're obstacles until you decide they're not.
Right.
So no, going into the arts was like extremely discouraged in my household, which is hilarious because my dad was an actor in like Jane Mansfield films in the 60s and 50s, but because he was a burnout, and my mom, who was from Mexico, and my parents should have been my grandparents because they were so much older than me. They were of the old world generation, and a lot of like immigrant kids deal with this too, where it's like, if you don't have a college degree, you are nothing and no one, and you will die in destitution because you're an idiot. And it's like, yes, but with what money in the United States, right? So I did a year and a half of college that I paid for myself, and then dropped out and gone to games when I was 18. Because I had my lateral experience perpendicular to VO, right, being part of the sausage factory as the client,
right.
As I was getting more involved, because I was working out of Orange County, which is about like an hour and a half to 2 hour drive to LA, it occurred to me of like, maybe I should start taking VO classes so I can become a better director, so I can better understand what I'm asking actors to do. And so very casually over the course of like 4 years, I would go up on nights and weekends and do a VO class here and there. I did Upright Citizen Brigade improv, like their whole 4 credits, because it was interesting to me here and there. And then my last experience in dev was just so negative. I was like super burned out and bottomed out, and I just felt like, well, I have nothing left to lose. And I didn't, at that point, I just didn't feel like I didn't want to fight to be in games anymore. So it occurred to me, I was like, wait, I kind of casually been doing VO for like 4 years, like a 4-year colleger. Maybe I can do VO. And I did my demos and then sent them out and started working right away. But I think a lot of why the transition was easy for me, at least for game VO, I understood Like I always get compliments and whatever from game clients just because like the shorthand is there. Like
Yeah.
if I mean, if you're a voice actor who plays games, that's already half the battle because you understand context. The less that needs to be explained to you, the more efficient and more appealing you are as a voice actor because we're basically thoroughbred horses. We don't have all goddamn day for you to get in the mood and do your thing. This is not a shoot. We have a very tightly scheduled um session where we are going to get what we came for in the 1 to 4 hours that this was scheduled for, or you are not working with us again. Okay.
Right.
We're short order cooks. So if you're a gamer as a voice actor, that's already a huge advantage. And then for me, I'll cut to the chase and just ask like implementation questions or whatever, so we just get there faster. So they're always like, oh, it's such a difference to work with someone who understands games. Just a lot of it is just communication, because if you don't understand, then the easy analogy for me too is like, if you've never watched a television commercial, how would you know how to audition for one? You've never seen one before. You've never heard it. So like you're spitting into the void. So if you've never like looked at a game, and especially now where, I mean, if you're like, I wonder what kind of VO this game company wants. Everyone and their mother have made, complete cutscene super edits for you on YouTube. Or at any given time, you can log on to Twitch and see people playing the game, so you get a clue. There's no excuse to be ignorant. Same thing with like, I don't book a lot of animation. What's the last cartoon you watched, like in earnest? None? None since you were a kid. Oh, weird. Maybe that has something to do with why you're not booking animation, because you literally have no idea what's booking right now. So for me, booking game VO was quick and easy. And then it was like a real shock to the system at first. I mean, I adjusted, but just like, the protocol shorthand etiquette for like a commercial or a promo or animation has nothing to do with the setup for games. Completely different workflow, completely different prerogatives of the directors and stuff. Like I did my most famous story is like I did a 2-hour session for Silk almond milk, and the whole line was Silk tastes like better, because it's a TV tag that they used for a long time. They have to be super precious about it. They're gonna cut to picture while I'm being held hostage because they want to make sure they really got the one that they're gonna use, and they used it for the next 2 years, versus pumping out 300 lines or whatever in a 4-hour session. Totally different. They don't have time to be precious over Silk tastes like better. This, not that one. Okay, Silk tastes like better. Anyway, so I think between me having already a ramp up in understanding game VO, and then trying to translate that and like adapt quickly to adjusting to expectations that I had to meet and the other kinds of VO, I just kind of took off. But I really do attribute a lot of that again to just like giving a shit about how VO is used, and then also making sure I am a consumer of the things I am auditioning for. Be it like, and like another easy one too is like I was talking to a girlfriend who's newer to voice acting, and she's like, I'm not booking commercials, and I'm like, are you skipping the commercials on YouTube? Yeah, those are the things you didn't book.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10 on YouTube, when there's a like an ad and it's like for a national brand, it's something that I auditioned for that I didn't book. So I listened to it to see what booked, because it interests me. I like money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, like, and everybody will say the same thing. Everyone's path into acting will be different, and that's true. There's not one way for A to B. It will be different for everybody. But just speaking for myself, I think just like embracing the thing that you're working on and towards helps.
Yeah. And it's funny because I did not do that wholeheartedly in the beginning to the extent I do it now. I was certainly enthusiastic about doing it because voice acting for me was the way I was going to keep myself in town, because I had burned out on the road. And I said, I really just want to be a voice actor and stay in one place, and this would be my dream. And I kept looking at it as the thing that was saving me from having to go on the road. And I didn't spend as much time researching the things I was reading for. I had enough of technique to be able to book things without knowing much about them. But there was a ceiling for that. And yes, I agree. As I've learned more about the things I read for, you're able to contextualize your read more and perhaps make a choice that director or that casting director is going to connect with and say, okay, they get it. They get it. But you're right also in that when you're doing a commercial, it is a different workflow. And my experience was like yours with Silk. I did something years ago for a newspaper. Remember those? And they
What's
had
papered, Papa?
yeah. What's paper? What are things you hold in your hand? I don't know.
What are papered, Papa? That sounds terrible.
They had written 5 spots, 5 radio spots. And usually when they write you a radio spot, they've overwritten it. In other words, it's got to fit into 30 seconds. It's running at 36 seconds. Let's trim some stuff, and then we'll get you a new script, and you can read that. So they had underwritten all 5 spots. And I said, oh, okay. I said, the writers said that actually this never happens. And they said, all right, well, sit tight. And I thought, this is going to be a long day. They're going to have to write more stuff. And usually for 5 spots, you might be there for an hour, hour and a half. They can book you for longer. For this, they'd be gone for an hour, and then they'd come back. And this is all through, a phone patch. And they said, okay, we're still writing and getting client approval. And I called my agent, and I said, how long do I stay here? And he says, well, the contract states that they have you for an hour and a half per spot. So they own you today. They own you. And I was there for about 5 hours. And I just kept going back to the lobby and reading the old magazines.
Were the residuals good?
Yeah, they were okay.
Well, for the residuals.
They were okay. And I still have a copy of those spots. But people don't always understand what it's like when it's open-ended that way. And again, this is still the greatest job that's ever been invented. And so this is,
it's Stockholm syndrome because we're kidnapped, but we love the money. So we'll never leave you money.
Yeah, exactly. So the only downside was this is in a studio that wasn't really near anything. And so I couldn't just go take a walk. I was just sort of hostage there. Speaking of Stockholm syndrome, but there are worse ways to be held hostage than to be getting paid for 5 radio spots. So
your worst day in VO is still better than your best day anywhere else.
It was better than my best day at McDonald's, I'll tell you that.
Yep.
My first job. Now.
Yeah. My first job that I was paid for, I think it was the short time that I was a receptionist at a pediatrician's office, which was like a hookup through a friend's mom. But that I was like asked to sit and witness like an infant circumcision. And I didn't know something so tiny had so much piss and blood in it. And then realized perhaps the medical profession, even an administrative position, is not for me. So that didn't last.
Oh my God.
Not so much.
Yeah, I was able to count. I mean, I didn't settle on show business only until I was about 25. Or so. I mean, I discovered stand-up in college and said, this is what I want to do. But I had to have a few more jobs after I had come home with my degree till I could support myself just doing stand-up. And it was still another 3 or 4 years of just doing whatever I needed to do to pay those bills. Usually it was waiting tables. But I don't regret any of that because it gives you an everyday life that you can reference when you need to play somebody who has an everyday life, who doesn't get to sleep until 11 if the kids don't have to go to school and get up and interview a colleague for a show. I mean, there are certain things that I have to use my memory for to connect with because I've been very fortunate. But I'm glad for those 15 jobs. I can name almost every one of them.
First of all, everyone should work in service, whether it's food service or customer service or whatever, even for a short amount of time, because it just makes you a better human.
Yeah, you should know what it's like to bring someone their food.
And be treated like garbage, so hopefully you don't turn into an adult who does it. But
or not tipped.
Spend some time. Yeah, everyone should spend some time working in the service industry in whatever aspect. But going into, workforce with none of that, I think can make you like a really cold piece of shit.
Well, as they say, if you're out to eat with somebody and they're nice to you, but they're rude to the waiter, they're not a nice person.
Oh, no, not at all. I bet they treat their dog better.
Yeah, exactly.
We're seeing a lot of that right now, just to be topical. Folks, non-negotiable. If you go outside, if you interact with the public, wear a goddamn mask, because there is a cringe, embarrassing amount of essential worker people who are either fast food workers at Starbucks, at the grocery store, whatever, who are being harassed, targeted, and coughed on by people who won't comply with masks. It is not a joke. That's my PSA for today. That is,
It's true.
it's not political. It's just basic science, and people want to live. And I got to tell you, like, if I got COVID, I would rather die than be a survivor, because a lot of survivors have seemingly permanent organ damage, which for us would be career ending, because among the symptoms is permanent shortness of breath and lung damage, and that would be us out, done forever. So I'm wearing a mask, and you should too. Please be nice to people. I think a lot of that behavior honestly has to do with people who have never worked a customer service job. And like, these essential workers are being, left to the wolves essentially, and having to interface with, be like the front line of defense. People who were just trying to have a job are now like the front line of defense, fighting people who want to enter an establishment without a mask on because it's oppressing my liberties. Okay.
It's the same people that find you online.
They all sound like that to me, honestly. They're as intelligible if they have the mask on. No different.
Yeah. Well, I became a good tipper after spending a little time in service, but when I started making some money, I became a very good tipper. And now with the pandemic, I've stepped my tipping game up a little bit. There's a place my wife likes to go to get a coffee, and whenever I go to get it for her, I make sure that they have a nice extra tip. And just because I know that they they have to be out around, as you said, a bunch of aerosols floating around them, and they don't have a lot of control over that. So, yeah, keep that in mind, ladies and gentlemen. Plus, the other reason you should do service is, and this is mainly for a lot of younger people, it's important to know what it's like to show up to work knowing that you need to make at least $70 or $80 that night to make rent the next day. And you can't go out and drink what you made with the rest of the staff that wants to go party after the place shuts down. It takes a little bit of discipline. So.
That's a whole, I rarely have nice things to say about America as a lifelong American. And one of them is that, like, the reason Euros get so indignant about, what do you mean I have to tip, is because
theirs is included.
Other countries are guaranteed a living wage.
Yeah.
We don't do that.
Yeah. That's a whole other thing right there. It's a whole other thing. That's all right.
We can for fun stories, folks. This is the wrong cast.
We can talk about whatever you want. This is what we do here on the old Streamcast.
I don't want to be ranty McGrandma, but there are some. We definitely have a lot of problems. That the most frustrating part for me all around is always like when we have problems that other places have already solved. And instead of just adopting those practices, we try to reinvent the wheel. Like, somehow, if we come up with an American solution, it's better. Is so dumb. It's so dumb because it hurts everybody in the process. Like, just like, look at any other examples. No, okay, yeah, we'll come up with an American branded stamp thing that doesn't work. Great. So.
Well, that's why I love what Andrew Yang discovered, that people don't like it when you call it universal basic income because it sounds too socialist. So he called it the Freedom Dividend, and people liked it. It's like, yeah, it's the same thing. We're still giving you money every month. We just call it something more American sounding, and people suddenly took to it. So, yeah.
Marketing is the most important part of legislature, which is so awful and says so much about people. But, you and I work in marketing, and we work
in this business. Yeah, exactly. We learn a lot about psychology this way.
Did you know that advertising is convincing you that you need something that you've never needed before?
There's a great movie called Roger Dodger, which I'll bet you've seen. You don't know it?
I don't
okay,
know
see, this is because I'm an old man. But this movie is maybe 15, might be 20 years old. I don't know. But it's Campbell Scott, the son of George C. Scott and Colleen Dewhurst. So, little movie trivia moment for you. He stars in it as an ad executive, and it has a young Jesse Eisenberg as a precocious student. And so Campbell Scott is an ad exec, and he's just an absolute shit of a person. And he boils down advertising into one sentence, and you can see it in the way he approaches women at a bar. He said, advertising is making you think you're missing something, and we have it. And that's it. That's it. You're missing something in your life. Yes, Elizabeth Berkley is in it, and she's wonderful in it. It's a great movie. It's almost like a play, but it's a really good movie. And if you want to learn what it's like to be that person, to watch a person who basically his approach to people is, you're missing something and I have it. I'm going to make you feel small for a minute, and then you're going to want my approval.
Do you know where else that applies? Which is funny. Like, I always say, auditioning and callbacks and acting, you have to have the same approach as you do with like dating, or else you will fail. Insofar as like you can't approach dating with the stench of desperation, because it's repugnant, whether it's like overt or not. If you go into a date, you're like, I'm just like really concerned about dying alone, and I don't want them to find my body covered in cat piss, and please, lovely, my eggs are drying up. Like, if that's running in the back of your head, they're gonna go running. But if you show up and you're like, sup, cool, I'm gonna get out of here, and you just like have this air, if at least what's writing in the back of your mind is like, I'm all good, I don't need this,
right?
But you can't be desperate. So the same thing with auditions. I certainly think I book more when like two things have to happen at the same time for me. Like, easy example, a callback that's in person, which we don't do those anymore, but when you had a callback, so like you say you audition from home, and then they've narrowed down the candidates, and then they have you and 10 other people come in and try out in front of like the producers or whatever. Two things need to happen for me. One, I need to have the mindset of like, I don't need this job. Right. I'm really good for this job, and if you idiots don't hire me, that's your loss.
Yeah.
But it's no sweat off my back, whatever. That has to be. And then another thing I stole from Lupita Nyong'o. She did this when she was doing like all of her initial whirlwind of press for 12 Years a Slave. And someone asked like the really annoying, so what was it like when you walked in and did the audition? And again, like some things stick with me forever. And what she said was like, oh, I just told myself this is the first day of work, so let's work.
Ah, nice.
What? And that's such a dope reframing.
Of course.
Such a good reframing of like, because if you go in with the mind of an audition, again, it's sort of like that stinky desperate date thing of like, I just really want this job, like I'm like one no booking away from like moving back in with my parents and giving up on acting. Please, I really need this job. Like, that's not gonna work. But I mean, once I got that from her, I adopted the same attitude. It's like when I show up for a callback, I'm like, all right, let's do work. I'm here to work. You here to work? Let's go.
Yeah,
that helps out a lot more.
Yeah, it's evolutionary psychology.
It shuts down your stupid lizard brain.
Yeah.
Freaking out.
Well, that's more evolutionary psychology. People always say lizard brain. It's like, I don't know what that means. It's like, well, this is how lizards operate. It's a very binary existence. I'm afraid. Yeah. I'm aggressive. I'm afraid. I'm aggressive. It's, it's kind of like, go get this thing, run from this thing. And yes, we are wired to sort of recoil from people who seem as though they are frail or unstable because skittish, because unless you're naturally a very, very paternal or maternal person, every now and then somebody says, oh, he was so nervous, it was so sweet. Usually it's more like, yeah, he was just really confident, or she was just really together. And the reframing I love, because Bryan Cranston has an interview where he mentions that.
I have that posted on my how-to page.
It's maybe a minute and 18 seconds. And if you are even considering going into acting, you should watch this every single day, because he said, I had that attitude. I really want to book this job. I would go to an audition. Yeah, I really want to book this.
It's not a job.
Yeah, he says, no, they're hiring you. No, they're auditioning you to see you play a character. Your job is to go and play this character and leave. You're not auditioning for a part. You are playing a character. If you just think about that, you're going to give a great performance. You're going to leave. And he said, I started thinking that way, and I haven't stopped working.
Yeah. So like that's like auditions are job interviews. It's just a different kind of job interview, and we do a lot more job interviews than the average person. Yeah. But I tell people all the time, like, you need to have the same attitude going into all of it. For a job interview, like, this is the first day on the job. They just want to see what you're like to work with. So pretend it's the first day that you're working. Don't be desperate. You're fine. You don't need this job. They need you more than you need them. All that stuff. And if nothing else, it shuts up. It helps to mask anxiety, and all that. There's also, I can't find it on YouTube anymore, but there was like when George Clooney did Inside the Actors Studio. Someone asked him for advice on pilot season, and the TLDR of that, he was just like, you didn't have the job before you walked in, and you probably don't have the job when you leave, so have fun. You literally have nothing to lose.
Right.
You have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
So again, like, all that stuff. Oh, I was gonna say, there's another video that I posted on my website where it was a casting director, and like it's like Broadway or one of those YouTube channels where they do like little 3-minute bites that are obviously for like aspiring actors with like FAQs. And so this casting director he was asked to, I think he was asked to define talent. What is talent?
Mm-hmm.
And again, like another one of the things that is in my brain forever, he's like, talent is executing skills with confidence. So it has nothing to do with how good you actually. He's like, if you come up in front of the panel and you're the most talented person in the world, but you choke, we don't know how talented you are because you got nervous and choked. Versus a mediocrely talented person, but it's just like, like confident. That's talent. I was like, oh, so that's another thing that I like a lot of, just like, it's just executing skills with confidence, more so of, because like the whole, first of all, there's no like objective, which is why like awards and stuff make me cringe, because like, how can you be like, I do the goodest VO, you do okay good VO, but I do the goodest VO, I am the goodest at it, I did the goodest this year. That's like, there's no way to measure the goodest VO of anything. And if nothing else, if you want to boil it down, I always feel very strongly that like art is just something that elicited a reaction or an emotion from the viewer, positive, negative, whatever. If it made you feel something, if it reminded you that you're alive, or reminded you that you hate this kind of art, great, we did our job. That was the goodest VO, right? Everything outside of that is the technical stuff of like, how easy are you to work with? Do you understand the shorthand and blah, 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 that other stuff we talked about.
Right. Yeah. I would say that all good therapy and all good philosophy revolves around one basic idea, and it is a riff on the Serenity Prayer. And I'm not religious, but the idea of the Serenity Prayer is, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the strength to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That's any good philosophy is, if I can't control it, I might as well put it out of my mind. If I can control it, great. That's good news, because then there's something I can do about it. And the therapy I did years ago basically revolved around that central tenet. You're going to learn to focus your energy and your thinking on whatever is in your control. Learn to identify those things. Take the things that are out of your control and practice just minimizing them and saying, whatever happens, happens. And my wise friend, the therapist that taught me this, says, by the way, nobody does this 100% of the time. You're only human. But if you can learn to do this 75% of the time, you're going to have a fantastic life. And he added the caveat, and it'll be full of things that you didn't want. Every day, something comes that you didn't want. But because you've learned how to identify what's in your control and what's out, you know how to get to work. And man, is that ever true for acting?
There was a runaway hit on Hulu and BBC. It's on Hulu for Americans, called Normal People, which is the height of bleak Irish darkness. Normal People's great. It's based on a book by an Irish author who's entirely too young to be this successful. She's like 26 or 28. Normal People was her second book. Her first book has already been optioned and is stuck in pre-production now. But Normal People, it's a story of two young Irish people and the trajectory of their relationship from high school to past college and where that goes. And it was so good, and that I've like absorbed. I mean, stuck at home, so I absorbed a lot of interviews. Yeah, that's why I did that, not because I'm obsessive. But Paul Mescal, who plays the lead, and this was his first. He'd never been filmed before. Like, he came from theater, so this is like his first TV show, and like he's like an Irish Paul Newman in features and elsewhere. But I wonder what this was in relation to. Maybe they were talking about like the pandemic. I think they were talking about like the pandemic of like, why are you asking actors this? But he, like, the interview's like, so what advice do you have for young people who are going through this pandemic? And like, this guy's trapped in his apartment in London and he's like 24. What the hell does he know? But he did spit out, he's like, well, when I played football, so soccer, he's like, my coach would say, just control the controllables and don't worry about anything else. And I was like, I like that. So it's like the TLDR of what you said, just control the controllables. What in your immediate purview can you actually affect, fix, and make better? Because the other stuff is out of your control. I've had this talk with like other voice actors too, in terms of like, Erica, deal with it. So Erica Lindbeck is like the little sister I never asked for. And she's another voice actress. And we were with the same agency. We started around the same time, and we were at brunch early on. And she was just like, she's 10 years younger than me. So she was having like a minor temper tantrum, and she's just like, Fryda, why didn't I book you with this and that and the other? Like, why don't they like me? Because she takes it very personally. Like
Uh-huh.
now Erica's like a big shit, and she's worked with everybody, and she's famous, and she's at conventions and whatever. But early on, she was just like, why aren't they booking me? And I was like, your pancakes, okay? You're like, because we were at brunch and there's the menu, and I was like, you're freaking pancakes, and sometimes you want bananas and sometimes you want chocolate chips, and there's nothing wrong or better or gooder about either. It's just sometimes they want a different flavor and it's not your fault. And she was like, oh, and she brings that up all the time, that I called her pancakes.
Pancakes.
Yeah.
Why can't I be French toast?
It's like, well, they didn't want it. They didn't.
Yeah.
It's on what they wanted, and it's not your fault. Don't take it personally. You could not control that.
Yeah.
Maybe next time they'll want your flavor.
I had
She still brings that up.
I had a colleague, friend. I haven't seen him in forever, but Phil Tanzini. He's been in the business forever. He was on a soap when he was like 8 or 9 years old, so he's always worked. And by the time I knew him, and we were working at the same agency, booking stuff, he was in his late 30s. So he had already maxed out his pension, his health benefits, everything. Imagine by the time you're 40. You can't get a higher pension than you're going to get because you've earned their limit. And so he was already sage about a lot of the things that happen in this business, the ups and downs of it. And he said, I've learned this much. It's a buffet. Every now and then they let you pull up a chair and sit and eat at the buffet. And you've got to stuff your face with every piece of food, shove it in your pockets, do whatever you can, and then they're going to push you away. And then you'll wander a bit, and then they'll say, hey, the buffet's open again, and they'll let you sit down again. And it's funny because I've been very insanely lucky. I've not had a bad year since I've gone full off into voiceover. It's just been good years. Some years are better than others, but they've all been good years. But I understand what he means by that, because even on a month-to-month basis, when I look at my calendar, the months sometimes are crazy different in terms of what I'm earning. And it's absolutely out of your control. And it's been that way for 20 years, and you just learn to live with it.
It's typical, like, well, anyone who's a freelancer knows it's always feast or famine. Like, the faucet is on hard or it's just dry, which is why you have to
learn the business.
Find a cost of living that you promise, that you're like, okay, this is the threshold of spending, and then you just squat on your savings, because those are the things that are going to help you pay your bills for the months that are dry, because they happen. And like for us who are on the receiving end of the entertainment business, there are very specific peaks and valleys that are reliable every year, pandemic aside. Like, for example, after Thanksgiving, the American brain shuts off. People stop having meetings where they're proving stuff. Commercials are year round, but as far as like creative projects that need budget approvals and meetings and all this stuff from the executive level before we ever see a script, like animation and games, those pretty much go dry unless it's ongoing after Thanksgiving. People's brains are already on vacation mode. And then people kind of like, all right, reluctantly go back to work in January. And again, commercials are still kind of trickling in, but like the creative projects, all right, what are we going to work on? Let's get this first quarter budget approved. And then we don't usually see like the big creative new animated shows or games that are coming out, whatever, until like March or April. So from like end of November to like beginning of April is real quiet and kind of scary sometimes. And every year I always forget. I was like, oh, right, because people came back from vacation and decided to take the first quarter making plans while I starve. No, that's why you always have to have savings. And then get into like making an index fund and whatever else, have money laying around. Terry Pratchett he has a book of his like essays published that was like a great plain book for me. It was like commencement speeches, newspaper magazine articles, stuff like that, like non Discworld Pratchett follow law stuff, just like him speaking as Terry, which I really like. It's a nice little, I forgot what it's called, but you can find it. There was, I think it's from like a college, a university speech or something, where he talked about the goal is to live horizontally, not vertically. And what he means by that, he's like, for example, I don't know what it is, but when you make more money, you don't suddenly need to buy a yacht. Like there's not a direct correlation of like, well, I've made more money, so I must have a yacht now. He's like, you should live horizontally and feed the interests you had when you were poor and live within those parameters. So his example for living horizontally is like, look, I like books, all right? I had a very stacked library. Well, now I've made some money, so I have a bigger book room.
Yeah.
I got a bigger house, so I could put the books in it. So I have a bigger room for my books, and that's my expense. I still somehow don't want to buy a yacht. So all he just talked about, like all the other money he had either went into savings or other projects and stuff. But he's just like, why should your needs and tastes change just because your income went up? Not only does that make no sense, but also it's going to run you dry very quickly, especially when like artistic income is not a reliable thing. We don't work for a company, we work for ourselves. So
Right.
it is real iffy if we're going to have steady income. So same thing for me. I was like, okay, so I was trying to think about like living horizontally. And so like my biggest expenses since I started VO have been for VO, like buying my booth or buying this microphone or buying my interface, like the things that feed my business, right? And then as far as feeding me personally, while in this pandemic, it's just making sure to pay for more streaming services so we have fewer reasons to go outside. So yeah, it's just good life advice.
Looking at cottages for Plan B, as we talked about, like when you're done with the business. Okay, this is where I'm gonna live.
Phenomenon with like other people in the chat. Sup, Orange Jacinto? Long time no see. Someone I've seen from.
Oh, really?
Days. Yeah, it's
okay.
nice to see some familiar faces in there. Well, familiar names. There is definitely a phenomenon. First of all, there's like a millennial there's a millennial phenomenon of because my generation, and yes, I know Gen Z, I know you get it, I know you get everything because you were born plugged in, but the rest of us are still sort of coping with the idea that we'll never own property. So there is like a widespread phenomenon of millennials just like looking at property porn and just going through listings on Zillow and be like, I live in you, I live in you,
Yeah.
I live in you, but I'll never afford you. Where I live in Los Angeles, guys, I pay like just so you understand the economics of our business, so that you understand that we are like, speaking for myself, I am not loaded. I rent a two bedroom, 2-bath apartment, in unit, wash and dryer, balcony. Woo,
pretty nice. Pretty nice.
$26.50 a month. Okay, that's more than some people's mortgages in some places. I get that, but $2,650 is what I pay a month. The 3-bedroom homes in my neighborhood start at 1.5 million. I do not happen to have 20% of 1.5 million or even 10% just lying around doing nothing in my dragon horde cave that I squat on. I do not have my vault of ducats. Anyway, so it's because of stuff like that that myself and just like a lot of people in my age bracket, in my tax bracket, and the rest of us, we're all sort of stuck with this plan of like, oh, I guess I'm just gonna rent for the entirety of my working years and save and save and save and hoard and hoard and hoard and shove money into savings and shove money into an index fund, which you can look that up, but everyone should have an index fund. Index fund is a long haul fund, where if you start saving aggressively enough over time, that compound interest is kind of save you when you're older. So we're all just like saving and hoarding and hoarding with the plan of like, yeah, when we finally get close to retirement age, or this is a discussion my husband and I had to have because he's a sound designer for games like I used to be, and I'm a voice actor, and that's probably going to be tech or like remote stuff is going to be our careers long term. Retirement is more about like having the ability to work for pleasure and not for necessity to pay bills. It's like, well, you know what? I would be interested in doing this VO project for you. That sounds fun. I'm doing it because it's fun and not because I'll starve if I don't do it. That is nice to have that pressure off. So we've defined that as retirement. So we have this long-term plan of like, after we've sucked Los Angeles dry and we've gotten all we can out of it, to move somewhere else where we're not paying $26.50 a month just to rent, where hopefully maybe we can buy something outright or close to, and live comfortably until we die and have enough room to continue doing. Like right now in pandemic work from home mode, we share an office, which is rough for somebody who works in audio because he's in headphones all day. And then he can't make noise when I'm recording in the booth of the session. So we've made it work, but it's not ideal, right? So between stuff like that, and then there's a lot going on right now. If you go looking right now, there are a lot of articles trying to prognosticate, if that's the right word, trying to speculate, predict
Mhm.
Where this is all headed with pandemic, because the United States has done such a piss poor job of doing the basics for containment. This thing is not contained, obviously. Work from home for those who are privileged enough to have that accessibility is going to be a long-term thing. So there's a lot of discussion about like, how is that going to change the commercial real estate space, for example? If companies don't have to rent massive offices for hundreds of thousands of employees and they can work from home, then the company can save that overhead, for example. For people like us who have, for these months, worked from home successfully,
Mhm.
then it brings up the question, why are we here? Why are we here? If we could start spiraling of like, if what I pay for rent, I could afford a goddamn mansion elsewhere. You start, and then you have the accessibility of the property porn. You just get into a void of like, it's I mean it's very masochistic. It's very kinky, you know. Unless you like hurting yourself, don't do it, because it just like real pornography messes with your brain because it presents you with options that aren't real. Kind of the same thing, but it's been fun to do, and it's just been a really weird sort of self-awakening where like I talk to other friends and they're like, yeah, I've spent hours, look at this English cottage I could get. It's 5 bedrooms and it costs 200,000 pounds. Anyway, that's where I'm at. So the one problem I will say, like I have in my house, I have like a pro tips blog where just like if someone asks me a question over email or whatever, I'll just write a blog post so it lives there so I don't have to answer the question again later. And one of them has been like, do I have to move to LA or can I do VO in my hometown? And I still think it's valid insofar as that I was like, look, there's a self-perpetuating myth that all the actors are in LA. You and I know that's not true. Not all the VO actors are in LA.
Not all of us. No, most of
have
us
to
are,
be here.
but not all of us.
For the standard pre-COVID has been like, well, look, partially because they want quality control, so they want all
Yeah.
like if you've got a lot of actors in a project, whether it's games or animation, they want quality control, so they want the same studio space and the same microphone, so it all sounds the same as much as possible. It's less work for engineers to tweak. And then on top of that, frankly, producers just want to schmooze and hang out and feel important and smell celebrities' hair and sit on a couch and be part of like the fun day off of work where they don't have to do real work, but they can spend it, you know, hanging out with actors or whatever. So the producer's couch is part of it. Well, we have proven since March that production can keep going without having to do all that fanfare. So the future of work from home for VO is really viable, with the exception of, and I'm sorry, but like COVID doesn't just go away because you're bored with it or it's inconvenient. Motion capture and performance capture, you still have to do it in LA, and it is, once you become part of like the regular rotation of performance capture mocap actors, that is serious money, and that is an IV pump that is very difficult to pull out. I get it. Like it's great work if you can get it. I know someone who I was like spiraling with last night is looking at places in Britain, but is also like a regular tapped mocap actor, and he's like, oh, the money, and I got kids, and that's tricky right now because just like TLDR, again, non-negotiable. If you're curious about how COVID-19 affects voice actors, I did make a Black Lives Matter post because that is also important to me. But underneath that, sticking on the front page of my site is a COVID-19 explaining why I won't be doing VO in a studio until we don't have vaccines, we don't have therapeutics, we don't have preventatives, we have nothing. So until there's anything, I'm not doing it. The TLDR of that is that because we've proven that it's aerosoled and it lives in the air, up to like over 2 hours, almost 3 hours between people. So like, let's say Chris is infected. Chris is not infected. Doesn't matter, not my problem. If Chris is infected and he does a VO session and VO requires the mask off, and especially with VO, they've proven that forceful speech, so like yelling, singing, speaking with projection, is just like an air horn blast versus even like regular speech, which already like, you know, spits out a lot of infected particles. If Chris does a VO session, if I go into that room within the 2 to 3 hour bracket after his session, I'm going to breathe in his COVID and get the COVID, and you don't want the COVID. The COVID is bad. So technically PCAP and mocap actors, if they can do their job with their mask on, maybe not for facial capture, but just for like motion capture, terrific. We don't have that luxury. Speaking for myself, I have done some mocap and PCAP, but I'm not one of the regulars in rotation for that. I'm not known for that. So I could viably move away to another place where I don't have to pay so much for the cost of living and still continue to do my job. That is a discussion that is happening widely. There's also, the lingering on the hope of like, maybe COVID will go away tomorrow or at a specific day in June when we decide we're bored with it because this sucks. But I don't know. I'm betting on COVID. Tell you what.
Betting on COVID?
Put all your chips on COVID, dude. Death comes in the end. I've had so everyone knows that I'm not on social media, but I did keep some lurker accounts for safety reasons. So I have a lurker account on Twitter, namely because if you're in California, we're always on fire, and you have to be aware when it's fire season because you might get an evacuation call, and sometimes you find out from the fire department before you find out on your phone. And I was following a couple journalists, and all that sort of like had made COVID and its ramifications not a surprise to me. I was doing the prepper shopping in February. I was all set because I'm a weirdo who has absorbed way too much post-apocalyptic sci-fi to not know what I'm in for with this. But through the course of my lurking, I'm so annoying. I accidentally made friends with 3 separate epidemiologists, and when we were getting in the last few months some like emails from like casting and studios being like, come on in, the water's fine, we're only casting actors who are willing to put themselves at risk and come into our studio. And I just sort of like hit my limit, and I talked to 2 of these epidemiologists that I'm chummy with, just being like, back me up, tell me if I'm wrong, here's a post I'm going to put on my website, please check me and tell me if any of this is incorrect or what. And they were both like, no, absolutely not. You should not be going in a studio. Are you nuts? Are you nuts? Are you crazy? First of all, you and I both know if you ever look at like the metal pop screen at a studio, it is like yellow with spit. It's not cute anyway. So just being around that is a biohazard anyway. You would have to like touch it, lick it, put it in your face, but you touch your face thousands of times a day and don't know it anyway. And then add on top of that the aerosol part. I've just basically made everyone in the chat go into their own personal hamster bubble and never come out again. And I recommend it. Because there's no vaccine. Anyway, I'm fine. How are you?
That's okay. It's important to get informed as much as possible. The hard part comes when the fear starts to rise up because you're starting to read about things that are frightening. And you say to yourself, wow, this is actually kind of a nightmare we're living in. Now, the human brain is incredibly adaptive. And we find that we can still have a nice sine wave of joy and disappointment and frustration and satisfaction and relief and contentment all within a nightmare scenario, because that's why we're still a species today. We've adapted to the changing environments. We're living in what is essentially, if this had been described to us a year ago, this is a nightmare scenario we're living in. And yet
100%.
I am as happy as I've ever been. And I'm not obviously thrilled about the amount of freedom that I have given up. But as you've said, I do it because it's a responsible thing to do, not just for myself, but for my family, for other people. And at the same time, you start thinking, okay, what can I control? Well, I can go get information. You're getting information. Although at a certain point, I hope you're looking at pictures of kittens or something to make sure you don't stay in this one little chemical state of dread. It's very important that you do that. I'll go to the
top page of Reddit and like look at the animal GIFs.
Yeah.
Just as a palate cleanser. There's usually some video of some dog doing something.
Well, I think it's very, very important to be a dreamer. You do have to have your feet on the ground. But one of the reasons why I've been able to buy property, part of it is just because I've had a career that has paid me enough where I've been able to save the money and do it. But also because I'm ambitious and I dream. And so I go and do the house porn. I keep it in context. I realize, I'm not ever going to own this house, but for a minute, it's going to be fun to dream about it. And I think it's okay as long as it does not impact your regular life. If it starts to interfere with your ability to function, then you've got a problem. And so what we do is I look the same way you do. I look at these escape hatches and I say, what part of the world would we live in if it wasn't going to be the United States? Because I've already decided if we're going to live in the U.S., it's going to be L.A. Because New York is a fascinating city, but it's cold. So, I don't want to deal with those weather extremes. But if we had to check out and go to another country, we've already got a couple of countries on the old hit list, and one of them is Spain. The other one, the other one I'd have to talk my wife into, but it would be somewhere in Britain because of how beautiful and green it is. So, yeah, it's nice to have that escape hatch. And by the way, you never know when you're going to pull it. You never know because you spent all this time looking at it. You're thinking, you know what? Mentally, I've prepared for this. And so now I can actually do it. It doesn't seem like such a crazy thing. And you never know. You might be doing season 10 of Loba from another hemisphere.
Yeah.
You never know.
I mean, we'll see. Like, again, like, there's a lot. Like, it's all pipe dream stuff, too, because, like, guys, no matter what they tell you, it's not safe to fly right now. So we're landlocked anyway. But
we are.
I'm interested, like everybody else, to see how this long-term work from home situation just changes the workforce landscape at large, because it's already shifted a lot.
It has.
And this is a long-term thing. And then, like, you know, for COVID's sake, as many epidemiologists and scientists and whatever have said, people will determine how this goes. People, like individuals. So individual behaviors, whether you decide to go to a secret party or whether you decide to stay home or whether you decide to wear a mask or whether you decide to, whatever. My husband sent me a link this morning of, like, I don't even want to promote it, but, like, there's, like, a concert and they call themselves, like, the Herd Immunity Festival.
So their plan is to go ahead and have everybody get it. Yeah. And whoever dies, dies, and whoever lives is herd immunity. It's a very Darwinian approach.
We're gonna die.
Yeah. That's where this all boils down to is, like, look, what you're saying is true. If you do that, you'll get your herd immunity, but there's going to be some serious consequences to that. And I don't know if people really are ready for those kinds of consequences. I don't think they've thought it through. There's going to be a lot of loss. And there might,
I'm tired.
So, I know.
I'm so tired of it.
I know.
Like, yeah, guys, it's hard. Like, I believe it. I say it all the time. Look, if you can roll out of bed and accomplish anything, if you're getting work done, if you're taking care of yourself and your family, if you're cleaning your house, you are a champion. You are a champion among men and women. Sometimes doing more than me. It's hard work. Right now, I think. Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing is that, right now, we work in a world that is positively booming with activity because gamers, streamers, fans of the games, people who animate these things, everybody can do their work from home, they're discovering, and people are spending more time online than they've ever spent ever before. And so my hope is that people learn how to do it as constructively as possible, because before, and you guys know who've been following me for a while, before the pandemic, I would end every stream by saying, go outside, go hug somebody, go get human contact. You need it. It's very important. Well, right now, you should go outside because you need it, but you should do it responsibly. And as far as the human contact goes, unless you live with somebody, you have to be careful about that. So you have to find your way of getting all your needs met within this confined space that we have all been required to live in for safety reasons. It's very challenging.
Miss Ashley Reed in the chat. Hello, Ashley. How are you? Hello.
Ash is here. Hey, Ashley, you're going to be here in a couple of weeks. So gear up. Ashley Reed, one of the writers of Apex, one of the writers of Loba. Is that correct?
You know what? It's a big deal for me because it was a big deal for her because apparently Loba was the first character that Ashley was ever given full charge of to write. So for like as somebody who came up in game design, it felt very like circle of life to like be contributing to like an up and coming designers.
This would be a pivot.
Very cool.
This would be a pivot, and this is an actory question, but how much of yourself do you see in this character? Attitude, backstory, whatever. I mean, I'm assuming your parents weren't murdered by a simulacrum.
Not murdered. I have no thieving skills at all.
Okay. Good to know.
I have no bow staff skills, and I've shaved half my head. I did immediately buy a bunch of red hair extensions, though. Okay. So, like, my pandemic hair is I have a side cut where I'm sorry, but, like, we're all on our own, right? So I traveled back to 2014 and brought back my side cut. I don't care. It's out of fashion. Shaved half my head, and then I'm growing out this. Look, I have a little rat's tail because I made it half a shag mullet, and I look like a lady in the South. Anyway, I did already buy a bunch of like red extensions, so I can like do a single braid and just pop that in there for no reason other than to please myself, because who knows if conventions ever happen again, but for fun anyway, give me something to do. Loba, kind of like the instruction from Respawn was just sort of like, because they're even more so, sorry guys, more important than representation is intelligibility. If the common denominator audience American member can't understand what I'm saying, it's all for nothing. It's all a waste of resources. So I was asked by Respawn to just to do like the blandest Latin American accent I can do. And just like for the record, if people don't know, I'm half Mexican. I'm not Mexican American. I say I'm Mexican and American, because my father was a white American. My mother was from Mexico City. All her family is from Mexico City. She immigrated to the United States in her 30s, learned English as a second language in her 30s, on and on and on. And then I was raised very biculturally, but mostly in a Mexican household where like I was only permitted to speak Spanish with my mother in the household. We traveled to Mexico for all of summer vacation every year up until my teens. My grandparents, my mother's parents, would come and stay with us from like October to February. So like the family was always together. And then I spent 5th and 6th grade in Mexico City. So so to me, like if you're blank American, you are usually, a first or second generation kid of immigrants, and it's part of your culture, but you're not from that country, or maybe you've never been to that country. Like, for example, being African American doesn't mean that you've ever been to Africa or have any context or experience with African culture. You are African American, which is its own thing. So I am not Mexican American. I am Mexican and American. I experience those cultures very separately in their own countries. And I speak fluent Mexican Spanish. So because of that, by like Margaret's show and so many first generation kids, we all do our parents' accents. So I get hired a lot to do the accent, because my party trick, because I was raised in this, multilingual household, is just sort of like, no tengo acento en cualquier idioma. I don't have an accent in either language, pero puedo poner el acento si necesitas que suena como una gringa con un acento completamente espantoso. Lo puedo hacer si me preguntas, or I can have an accent in English like someone who learned it as a second language, because because here's the thing, and I this is my personal theory, but I'm right about everything. I think I book accents because of my experience with my mother as English as a second language, late in life learner, and as an immigrant. Here's the thing. This is the difference between, I think, like an American or white person doing an accent, and then someone who has like contextual experience with the accent. Immigrants are not going out of their way to play a racial stereotype of themselves. That's not the goal. Immigrants who learn English as a second language are desperately fighting to get their mouth around the words and to be as intelligible as possible. They're not showing off an accent. They're not showing off their stereotype. They're just trying to speak English well, right? So it's a combination of having that in the back of my head, and then also making sure that everything I say is fully intelligible, because otherwise, what are we doing here? This VO is useless. Like, if I put on a super authentic accent, but you can't understand what I said, these call-outs are meaningless to Apex players.
Right.
So, Loba's accent is basically a version of like my mom's accent that I do, but making sure that it's really clear when I say grenade here. It just needs to be understood. That is more important than representation. Sorry about it. So there's that. I do have a big juicy ass. That is true. I don't think she was modeled. We probably don't have the exact same dimensions, but it is hard for me to feel uncomfortable in any kind of seating situation. I don't know. Like, when you play a superhero of any kind, right? Because like I've done Poison Ivy, and I've done what's her name? One of Superman's villains. I've done
the femme fatale type.
Yeah, so I don't think you can go all method of like, let me pull on my experience when my parents were murdered before my eyes, and from that day on I just no, right, like that's not my life experience. So I think you just you can look at any interview with any actor who's ever been like, so how did you play the villain so well, or how did you dig? And it's just like, you just have to make that person make sense to you. If it was you in that situation, what would your reaction? How would you sort it out? Like, what would you do? And then I feel like that's a story that tells itself if you let it,
Yeah.
right? Without having to have been, I mean, like method acting is really wild to me, because it's like, do you have to become addicted to heroin to play a drug addict? Because that seems like a lot of work.
Let's ask Daniel Day-Lewis, and
That just seems like going too far.
yeah,
So
it's two approaches, and you're taking it.
Call me lazy. I don't feel like doing it.
They asked Harrison Ford once, what's your approach? What's your this, your that? And he says, I pretend. I play pretend. We're actors. We play pretend. And it's a very simple answer. If you ask Daniel Day-Lewis, when he made Last of the Mohicans, one of my favorite movies, he moved to the woods and learned how to build himself a log cabin that he lived in. He just convinced himself, I have to go all the way there.
That's a cool life skill. I don't know how that adds to the performance. Did you know that he was such a weirdo during Lincoln that he would text message, what's her face, Sally Field.
Sally Field.
He would text message her, but refer to her as mother.
Of course.
The real Lincoln would, and would only speak to her in character. But I'm like, did Lincoln text message? Because that doesn't seem historically accurate to me, Daniel. Anyway.
And on There Will Be Blood, apparently, if you approached him on There Will Be Blood, he was Daniel Plainview. And so he was not the nicest guy.
Stressful. It's so stressful. I could not imagine.
I am going to have my oats, and then I'm going to brain you with this bowling pin.
Like,
would you mind leaving me alone?
Then, yeah, so it got him to where he needed to be in his head to give the performance he wanted it to give. Whereas if you ask Kathleen Turner, I think she said, I just pretend. I pretend.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I need to have the same experience as the actor. There are no wrong answers. It depends on what comes out on the celluloid. If the performance is believable, great. Whatever you needed to do to get yourself there. But of course, you better be a damn well genius if you're going to take the Daniel Day-Lewis approach, because you're going to be hard to live with.
I think that's just extra credit. I think that's just taking production time money to build a cabin in the woods.
Yeah.
I don't know. We don't have that kind of time, guys. I've always explained, and hey, I'm not a face actor. I have no face acting experience. See, we're voice actors. They're face actors. The people who are extremely camera focused because they have is it getting my good angles? Am I in the shot? Is the lighting good? Is it framing my face? These are things that we don't have to worry about. I don't have to worry about. All I have to worry about is being on mic and not being too loud or whatever. Right. So I flex a different set of muscles. And then on top of that, like I mentioned earlier, we have a limited amount of time to get the thing done. So we don't have time for me to run laps and do extra credit to get in the mood. I had a voice director, a booth director, ask me, we were out of context at a party, and he was like, you know Cal.
Cal? Oh,
so,
if I have not worked with them, then I probably know of them. So.
Trivia. So Cal, whose legal name is Kal-El, and at first when I first met him, I was like, that's funny and nerdy. No, both his parents actually worked on actual Superman comic books, so totally earned. Cal's dope. He's a great director. Cal asked me at a party, he's like, hey, how do you walk in all confident or whatever, and you just start working? Because he's like, Fryda, I swear to God, I usually spend the first 30 minutes of every session making someone comfortable and warming them up and making them feel like they can run. And I was like,
who's he working with? On camera people?
Maybe. I was just like, dude, I just know we don't have that kind of time. I know that from the time we start, we gotta go and we gotta hit the ground running. And then on top of that, we gotta get this done with enough time for you to have second opinions, and maybe we go back and do a pickup and do that line again because you changed your mind, or we learned something new about pronunciation, whatever. I'm like, I'm extremely maybe too aware of just we don't have time to play. So let's go. And that's not to say that I'm giving the VO faster or something. I'm just aware of this was scheduled a certain way and we don't have time for other shenanigans.
Right.
That's all.
When you auditioned for Loba, was it one of those reads where you thought, I pretty much know exactly what I want to do for this quickly. I don't have to mess around too much to come up with a voice? Because that's not your normal speaking voice. Chatting with you is like chatting with an academic. You're rattling off your words. You're You're trying to keep pace with your thoughts. Loba seems to be very measured and very calculated in her tone.
Well, Ashley can back me up. So in the callback, as I recall, I remember it specifically being the kind of thing where they were testing how I played in terms of just like giving 5 different directions for one tiny line, and it's always, I mean, producers can contradict me, but they're not here. Callbacks are usually a test of what do you like to work with, how fast is your turnaround. Like if we ask you to zig when you're zagging, are you flexible, or are you going to be weird about it? Are you going to give us resistance, or is this like the only sound you can do, or can you meet us in the middle? What, before we pay for this,
Right,
before we commit the time and the money, are you willing to play, and how do you play? That's
right.
all. It's like a, it's a dry run of a date. So if I remember, the callback was just like a lot of that, of asking me to do the same tiny line 5 different ways, just to see if I was flexible, and if I was, I presume, giving them the thing that very often clients don't know what they want, but they know it when they'll hear it. So honestly, it's like, from my perspective, it's like trying to feed a toddler. What do you want? Do you want carrots? I got carrots. Bananas? No. Do you want pears? Do you want baby food? Do you want cucumbers? Anything. Pick one. But you can't be that frustrated on the inside or on the outside, right? You just have to be like, this one? No? Okay, spit it out. Okay, do you want pasta? No, it's on the ceiling. Okay, so I always feel like I'm trying to interpret the client's direction into what I have in my back pocket of things I can do, present a new way. It's like, oh, you didn't like peanut butters before, but do you like peanut butter with celery? And eventually the toddler or client, you're all babies to me, will bite and be like, oh, that's what I wanted. And you're like, good. And then you lock it in mentally and just keep doing that thing that makes them happy.
So you're trying to avoid the Samuel L. Jackson "Go the fuck to sleep" read, that
that's what they want.
the famous book that Samuel L. Jackson narrated. After a while, yeah. Well, I found that with me, I'm willing to give them anything they ask for, unless I sense, and this is where the actor's power comes in, that I'm not going to be able to do that for 4 hours. And that's usually your decision in the audition. A director put it brilliantly to me. He said, you get to decide how much you want to scream when you audition. You give your version of what your scream is going to be, because Apex Legends is the only game where you're not screaming. All the other games, we're screaming and dying. So in the audition, you give your version of a scream or a death noise or a incoming that you think you can maintain for 2 to 4 hours, and then submit it. And then we'll decide if we can live with that. So that's where you set your boundaries. So,
you definitely have to defend. You are your only advocate, only and best advocate in this whole business, because everyone else just wants to make money or get content off of you.
Yeah, right. Now, for a character like Loba, once you played around with it a bit and you had it, it seems to me that you have your technique down to, as you said, when you walk in, you're ready to go. You don't need a lot of warm-up time. Pathfinder for me, I've said this before, Pathfinder is me, but I'm just happier and a bit more excited, and so it's not hard to get there because I'm a pretty happy, cheerful guy to begin with. That's
pretty comfortable.
Yeah, it's a comfortable thing for me. It's never been a problem. It's one of the easiest jobs I've ever had, and not just because of how easy it is to read as Pathfinder, just the environment that I get to work in. For you, do you have to flip a switch, or is it just a little tweak?
I'm sure people have noticed in the lines, because they're even just like game callouts, but the whole point is to infuse them with the character's personality, right?
Yeah.
The Apex team will pull the reins or loosen the reins depending on how playful, 2 things, how playful they want me to be and who I'm saying it to, because like obviously the lines with Darren over here with Revenant have a very different tone than like the rest of the team, for example. Right. So there you've got the unique character interactions, and then on top of that, just for like all the multi-purpose ones that are to whomever about whatever, we did have some jiggling, because we can, even though she's got a personality, we can't make it all one note. So it couldn't all be like, every line is super sexy and she's always like, "Hi, puppy," because that's not a real person, and that's weird if it's every line. If she's just like, sorry dudes, no one is perma horny, it's weird. and then also kind of like writing the faders, as it were, as we say in the business, which no one says in the business. Playing in my head, I think it's because I'm a sound designer.
Yeah.
Like I've got a set of knobs, nipples. No, I've got a set of like oscillators and nipples.
Right.
Nipples. Anyway, I've
Clip
got a
that.
set of things you can twiddle. I don't know. Penis. No. There's a bunch of settings in my brain pan that in my head are being sort of like at any time.
Yeah.
They're either being, the faders are being moved, or the knobs are being twiddled, or the nipples are being and between all that we come up with like this, what we're looking for. Sound, I hate saying the sound we're looking for because VO is not doing voices. Everybody knows that, and we hate that. We don't say that. But let's say the mood, the right mood, right?
Right.
So Loba's mood wavers between like, I'm a lot of fun, also I'm very horny, but I'm also going to murder you, and just having her vacillate between those two, so she's like a believable, 3 or 4 5-dimensional person if you include her ass. Right, so she's believable. So it was just like a lot of that. So maybe I would do a line and the team would pull me back a bit of like, okay, but like not so much fun this time, more plain. And especially because call outs are such a prominent feature of Apex, a lot of the time the read needs to be extremely flat and militaristic. And for like, I had the benefit because like I'm the Johnny come latest. Right, they had already, you guys did the work, so I didn't have to. They had already hammered out with y'all first gen shipped characters how certain lines needed to be. So they didn't have to figure out with me. They already knew what they wanted, and I was sort of like the last to know. They had to like guide me into the right tone for XYZ type of lines. They'd already done it with you. It was second hat for them. I was, the one that had to be brought up to speed. So that was the biggest thing with Loba, of just like knowing when the personality's on display, when like the feelings are front and center versus a specific character, and when just to keep it like super flat and militaristic is lifeless. Like for me, when you give a military read, it's like, oh, so no acting, stop acting, got it. You know what I mean? Because you can't have, it can't be musical, it can't be excited. It's just very like, I don't know, like machine gun there, gun there, and like the team is regularly like, Fryda, less interested. It's
everything is out of a manual in the military. Everything is by a book and flat.
Because those calls are also things that are happening like every 10 seconds. Right. So just like with sound design, if you have a sound that's popping off every 10 seconds, it can't be bombastic, annoying, grating. It can't stand out because it fatigues your ears and your brain. So the same thing with VO. It can't be fatiguing. It's got to, for the stuff that's going off all the time, keep it really plain, keep it really simple. I don't care how sassy your character is. So that was, I guess, a little bit of a challenge with Loba because the baseline with her is like, I'm always on. I mean, I don't know why I'm doing her like Charo today, but
he buried through.
Yeah. Could you imagine?
Yeah.
She's gonna fire me.
Well, did you end up having any conversations with Ashley about the character? Because this is a character, the way she's rendered. I talked to Tom, one of the writers, about this. That this is a femme fatale character, a character that a lot of people are going to objectivize because that's just who they are. But they're trying to make a point in that she's not this way just because she's trying to make all these guys horny for her. There's more to it than that.
There is.
It's a fine line.
No. There's I'm just like, this is the face of a tired woman who came up in video games and has had this discussion many times.
Well, we don't have to have it if you're over it.
No, I'm old. It's been 85 years. I've earned this. No, so the deal with sexualizing between the male gaze and the female gaze is like Game of Thrones is a perfect example where I was like, look, none of us are saying cover up. I'm saying equality. For every pair of titties, I want to see some dong. You got it? Like equal opportunity nudity, equal opportunity sexualization. That's all. When it's clearly one-sided, we have a problem.
Right.
We have a big problem. I would like to see a bigger problem with some men's. Like the one time they show us a penis, it was to look at a genital wart. Like, are you kidding? It was such a slap. It's such a big dick slap in the face. Anyway, so when it comes to video game characters or whatever, so of the many horrible, misogynistic, awful things I've heard men say in the gaming industry, one of them that was repeated to me. So like so I'm not going to name names, but a friend of mine who's a long time in the industry and a creative director and a good personal friend of mine told me that this art director, who I believe no longer works at that company, but the art director, and it means nothing, like the guy was married with 2 daughters, means nothing, told my friend, the creative director, and I quote, "Everything women do is so that they appear sexy to men." And this was like arguing over character design, meaning in this guy's mind, and he's not the only one, he's speaking for a lot of other dudes out there, in his mind, he genuinely believes that every woman who wakes up in the morning, puts herself together a certain way, wears a certain type of hairstyle or makeup to appeal to him like he's a goddamn king. And it's sort of like, it's a very foreign concept to a lot of hetero men that maybe a woman put herself together a certain way because it makes her happy and she doesn't care if you're looking. There's this weird culture. It's weird to us because we're like, you all are insane. This weird cultural expectation that everything a woman does to herself physically, it's like a lot of dudes think we're all just sort of like living cocktail waitresses who are working for tips all the time, everywhere, in the workplace, out of the workplace, when we put ourselves together, which is where you get things from. She was asking for it. Okay. Well, for the record, we're never asking for it unless we're asking for it with words.
Like those words are coming out and it's an actual request. Yeah.
If I say please, that's asking for it.
Right.
But no woman on this planet is actually asking to be harassed, assaulted, or hit on based on appearance. That is y'all's assumption, and it is very wrong, right? So that attitude, and it's really scary coming from an art director in charge of, video game companies, art, gets translated into what you see come out of game design, of game character design, when there's no woman involved. Well, then, yeah, we get stuff that was designed for the male gaze because it's coming from someone who genuinely believes that all women should look like they're catering to his personal tastes, whatever they are. And then also you get into that weird divide of like, well, I wouldn't put it in her, so she's trash, not a woman of value, and I don't want to see her on my screen if I wouldn't put it in her. It's like, well, I mean, I don't know if y'all knew, but there are women who play video games on this planet, I have heard. In fact, it's sometimes counted as more than half of the population of gaming are card-carrying vagina holders. It's weird, crazy. New information, guys. I worked in games 20 years ago. The scars are new. So Respawn being made up of like, I think a lot of the creative heads like Mohammed at Respawn are of like my age group. And I'd like to think some of us are a little more evolved. And so them rearing up and protecting younger developers like Ashley gave her the leeway to be like, what do you want to do? What do you want to do with this character? And then, as my understanding, I don't want to speak for Ashley, but my understanding is cross-checked it with the opinions and feelings of a lot of other women who work at Respawn of like, how does this make you feel? And they took that feedback and made something that they agreed on. And, like, wow, it's so weird. Like, women made a character for their gaze, and she was still considered sexy by men. Who knew? And she doesn't look like a cocktail waitress. Weird. So strange. So, I mean, that in itself is, I think, like a success story that should be looked at and pointed to the next time some jerk off at some game studios like, all women do this because that's what they're asking for and they should look a certain way to satisfy my needs. It's like, well, did you ask anybody else in the studio? Because this is going to be an awkward conversation when someone outs you on Twitter in a long thread accusing you of XYZ. So yeah, that's fun. So I'm very proud to be a part of that. That's really cool for me as a feminist and someone who came up in games as a woman in video games and whatever else. I think that's really cool to be a part of. It's nice to see the end result, the rear end result, just whatever, it writes itself. And to, I mean, I don't know exactly the numbers, but I hear that Loba did well and that she produced some healthy concurrent numbers, like healthy.
Loba is tracking well. And hey, To be fair, to your point, I remember seeing quite a few ass shots of Mirage in the lobby. So they play him up a bit and I've seen quite a few female gamers go totally gaga, to use an old word, for this character. They sexualize him in a very big way. So Pathfinder, not so much. There's probably some weird fetish group that's into Pathfinder, but they haven't found me yet.
Twitch?
Yeah, post whatever links you want.
Some people have.
Yeah.
Okay, so I found this one fan artist, and I will quickly scroll to see if she goes by. Her Twitter handle is _MIYANN, and she's like, her fan art is the derpiest, funniest.
Okay.
I wonder if she did it. Oh God, she posts so much, I'm never gonna find it. But there was a really great cartoon, like little 3-panel comic or something I found of like the two of the girls, including Loba, being like, I'm the prettiest girl. No, I'm the prettiest girl. And then like Mirage pushes them up. I'm the prettiest girl. Which is very Roger.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
I
it
like
is.
that a lot.
It is, absolutely. And you have to be able to have fun with this ultimately, because a lot of heavy themes get bandied about when you're creating a character like this. I mean, with her backstory, and then with the idea of the sexuality in it, and at a certain point, you also tell yourself, this is a game too. Let's try to have some fun while we do this. Let's not leave that out. And Loba has a real sense of humor, especially my friend Janissary, who has taught me a lot about how to play this game. And I've only known her online, brought up earlier in the chat that she loves the fact that Loba has that line, you should smile more. Because it's very obviously a dig at what a lot of women have to hear. Most women have to hear at a certain point from a man, usually a stranger. And it's a nice way of turning that around, letting them know, we know what you're up to, we know what you're on to, and this is my retort.
So when reaction videos went up on YouTube, I would open up all of them in hundreds of tabs, and I would just skip to the end and like judge that streamer or that YouTuber based on how they reacted to that line. And decide
really?
Cool or not. Yeah. Nobody cares about these metrics. This is just for me personally, but it was interesting. The majority of dudes were like, hey, yeah, like they were cool and they were into it. And I was like, that feels like a good healthy indicator where the industry's at. I maybe saw a couple cringes, but for the most part, like the dudes were like, yeah, like they were into it. So and didn't make any comments. Even the guys who weren't like over the moon didn't verbalize any comments of like, that's messed up, that's some feminazi bullshit. I didn't hear any of that.
Well, that's good. I mean, it at least shows a level of awareness. And I'm coming at the game from a different perspective because I'm a different generation. I mean, I'm 50. I'll be 51 in August. And I grew up with games, but I grew up with Atari, with Pong, and then with Super Nintendo. It was not the same world that it is now. It reflected the world that we were able to create back then with that tech. But you just didn't have stories like this. And so as somebody who's older, who is seeing this in games now, I'm astounded at how much they are able to take everything that is happening in the world, the real 3D world, and if they want to, they can put it in this world. You couldn't do that with Super Mario Brothers. You couldn't do that with Pac-Man. And for me, it's been an adjustment to play a game and realize, oh my God, this really is... it really is a commentary on what's going on in the world right now. And that was a new experience for me because I spent years not gaming at all, just busy trying to raise kids and be married and all that. So I got back into the video game world through this game.
Aw.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, and it has opened me up to quite a few things. Believe me, I barely knew the difference between sex and gender before this game. I basically, oh yeah, I know it's a whole different concept. Well, we had this conversation with Allegra anyway. Always ready to have it again. But the point is that I've always been a Socratic thinker. If this is true, then perhaps this, then this, then this. I just try to put things together logically. So I just want the information. I'll form my opinion once I get all the information. And so as far as the Bloodhound character, I need more information. I don't know this world. So give me the information. And I'm starting to learn. And so all I ask is that there are going to be people who come into the world of Apex or the world of video games who are coming into it from a different experience, and they may recoil at first because it's so foreign to them. And my only advice is just get the information. Don't make up your mind yet. You've got to get inside the person's head that made this game. Their experience is different from yours. Get a little bit of their experience and start to make up your mind then. But most people, especially online, social media, they just have an immediate hot take. And I like that people are starting to be more aware now, and they're taking a little bit longer before they make up their minds about something. I wish more people did that.
Well, look, here's the deal with toxic fandoms and reactionary nonsense. You're arguing about toys. These are toys.
Yeah.
These are toys.
These are games.
You work on toys, you're playing toys. And like getting up in arms or like harassing people or targeting people or doing anything nefarious over a toy is so sad on so many levels. They're toys.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Context is key, ladies and gentlemen. We are, we've been at this for almost 2 hours.
Told you I could talk.
What? I knew that. You and I could go for another 2 hours. Look, we did a tech test yesterday. Everybody, I usually do a tech test with somebody the day or 2 days before, just to make sure I know what I'm doing, and then I find out I'm not. But usually the tech test is anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. Sometimes it's a half hour. Yesterday, our tech test was an hour and a half. It was an hour and a half. And we talked about everything we're talking about now. And, well, we talked about real estate a lot more. So I thought, I don't know how many Apex fans are going to want to hear about my opinion on, how to buy property. But yeah, this is what I like to do. This is why I like to do this as much as I like playing the game, because the people who are responsible for these games, to me, are more interesting even than the games themselves. So that's why I like to get there. Wait, let me ask one favor. I want to duck my head out and see if something has happened yet in the living room, and then I'll come back and report. Are you okay? Right. Are you okay with the chat for 30 seconds?
Yeah, it's you guys here. Let's open up to questions.
Open it up to questions. Mind yourselves.
People, give me content.
Mind yourselves. The mods are here. All right, mind yourselves. Not that, Fryda can't handle herself, but let's not make her have to handle herself. All right? Be right back.
You wouldn't like me if I have to handle myself. So regarding Portuguese or Spanish, I don't know. Ashley probably knows better than me. I will say, for the record, that whole hubbub over like the demonio line, that was a random pitch that I did in the session where there was a lot of demon throughout the script, and I was just like, hey, the Spanish word for demon is demonio. Can I give you an alternate take, and you don't have to use it if you don't like it, throw it away. And they ended up using that in the trailer. I didn't even know that was how you say demon in Portuguese. That's a funny quinkadink. So that's the reason there's only that one line of a foreign language for Loba. If there's going to be more, it's up to Respawn, but I really don't know. That was just my little suggestion there, because I didn't want to say demon so much.
There you go. So I already know the question too. Demonio. I love how it sounds when you say that, by the way. I think it's cool.
Spicy. No,
yeah.
I just wanted to offer. I was like, I could say it in Spanish, and just like pure luck that it happened to also be Portuguese, just to keep fans fighting over nuance. That's how we have to keep them interested.
This is the one I can't wait to hear your answer for. The B53 asks, question for Fryda: how can Loba run across World's Edge and Kings Canyon in 6-inch heels?
You know what? They're actually really practical heels. They're like chunky square platforms. They're not stilettos. Like stilettos get caught in cracks and crap, or like, they'll spike through grass. Like, don't go to a lawn party in heels. It's such a joke. But those big chunky kind of platform heels, and they look kind of rubbery, actually look kind of comfy. Like, you can do gymnastics and stuff in heels. There's plenty. So I buy it. I was, I'm usually the first to be like, that's not practical footwear, but hers are actually okay as far as footwear for game characters go.
All right.
They're ergonomic.
Here's one, Frankie Boy, one of my mods. Frankie Boy de Mexicali. Mexicano aquí. Do you know any other languages besides Spanish? Also, I would love to hear Loba talk Spanish. Well, of course you would, Frankie Boy.
I do have a pretty good ear for languages because of the bilinguality.
Mm-hmm.
I did German in high school. I've lost most of it. Ich habe keine Ahnung. But I can pull up the accent pretty well. I did. EA let me do trailers for Mass Effect Andromeda in French and German as well, which was dope. Because all I had to say the line was like, we're here.
Okay.
And so I still remember the German was Wir haben es geschafft, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Or Wir haben es geschafft. I don't remember the French when I linked them on my site, but like I can fake the accent well enough. And like as I was telling you yesterday, the joke in my household is my husband, who is in the void behind, he's in Darren's face somewhere.
He's in the nether. Yeah.
Yeah, my husband is my import. He's from Scotland,
Mm-hmm.
and people have asked regularly if I have trouble understanding him. And the joke in our house is like I have to put on his accent not most of it, but like often enough, especially like yelling across the house to be understood. So I've gotten pretty good at least in Edinburgh, Scottish accent too, which is Scottish people will say is not really Scottish, and it's Scottish like blah 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 blah. Yeah, I know. But then if you get into like, look, I'm experienced enough, I'm invested enough in this relationship where I've ingested plenty of Scottish culture, and like Kevin Bridges, who you might know, who's a well-known Glaswegian comic, he's put out a couple books which remain audiobooks, and like through him I've gotten some good content on listening to the Glaswegian accent, and like he says stuff like earlier, which just sounds like choking to me. Instead of earlier, it's earlier. Anyway, that's how Glaswegian sounds to me.
I am in love with most accents. I think they're all amazing, and I love just getting that dose of culture that just comes across in how people choose to say words. And Scottish for me is one of my favorite accents because it's kind of brutal. I mean, they hit those words hard, and it's just so rough and raw, you know?
Did you know that if you are Scottish, you can speak Spanish really well and easily? Because Joe started practicing Spanish when he moved in with me and stuff.
Okay.
And I started teaching him words, and like we found out really quickly, okay, so Scottish people also roll their R's.
Yes.
It's inherent in the language, so you don't have to teach it.
Right.
And the vowels are the same. So like no in Spanish is no. What is it in Scottish? No. It's all no. It's like the same vowel bend. So it's annoying because I'll teach him anything in Spanish, and even if he doesn't know what he's saying, it's pronounced right the first time.
There you go.
Very bizarre.
Very bizarre, but there's your life hack. If you're Scottish, start learning Spanish. Yeah. Should be easy. Yeah. Let's see. We have no end of questions here. Here's one from Arcanotechnician Archaics, I think.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah. Question: how has your experience with the Apex community been so far? You've had
Minimal
this,
and chill.
yeah.
Like the fact that I'm not on social media like took me out of like the initial blast zone, which is nice. And I've just seen like some hits on my website and stuff, and a couple contact forms, but just very little, very quiet, which is how I like it. Like this is I haven't been asked to do. I mean, I'm glad people are so obsessed with Loba and left me the hell alone, because this is the first like interview podcast I've been asked to do at all since coming out. So it's just like it's been nice and quiet for me.
And then
I don't mind doing it. It's just like I've had previous experience where just like oversaturation of exposure was not fun for me.
Yeah.
And it didn't like serve the project at all. So
yeah.
So no, this has been nice and chill and quiet. I'm glad they're happy with it and left me alone.
That's good, and that's the way we roll here. I think that yes, you can definitely overexpose yourself, and that's a weird line that content creators have to try and walk, because on the one hand, they say if you're going to create content, you got to do it every day. You got to be out there every day because people will turn to someone else. On the other hand, they say, too much. You never know. People could get bored. So I don't even know anymore. I don't even have a time limit for these chats. It's like they go until they don't go, until somebody has a hard out.
Well, right? like I was saying at the beginning, you actually get to decide what you think success is, whether you are not successful. Like other people do not get to measure your success, because this is not a measurable quantitative thing. It's a figment of your imagination. You can be dirt poor, do 2 VO gigs a month, and if that's the best you've ever done, you've succeeded. Who cares?
Yeah.
Whatever. Like I know people have some weird metrics like I want to be in the top IMDb 100. What does that even mean? It doesn't. Do you know, like the IMDb star meter makes me laugh, because anytime you get a jump, it's just that many more people that we're like, who the fuck is this? Like I know, like when I got bumps from Apex, and I got bumps from the Jessica Jones thing, and people are just like, so it's just like that's why like the people in the top 10 of IMDb are in the like the Netflix series of the week,
Mm-hmm.
where everyone's like, who the fuck is this person? And they look at their IMDb, what do I know them from? It doesn't mean that you're more successful or visible or famous. It just means that many more people didn't know who the hell you were before this thing.
Yeah.
For example, it is not a metric of success.
I've been saying this for years, and I'd probably have to amend it again, but we live in dog years. Because of the internet, everything happens 7 times faster. You'll go through an arc of your life 7 times faster than you might normally because the internet brings everything faster. And it's a hell of a ride. But yes, if you start to equate your worth with those metrics, you're in for a very bumpy ride. That is guaranteed. So yes, you do have to decide what success is for you. And yes, the smart person, the wise person, will base it on things that is in their control. Because that's something you can always do something about. So, doing this, though, I have to live with the fact that I have to pay attention to numbers and analytics. I enjoy numbers and analytics, but I also have to tell myself I'm going to have to be okay with numbers that sometimes aren't what I want them to be if I was happy with what I put out that day. Mm-hmm. That's the chore. That's where the hard work comes in, is being okay with how many people actually watched or liked something I did.
Well, but I mean, like,
yeah.
Again, you can only control what you can control. So what
exactly
are you doing next? It's being like, and the next stream is a wet t-shirt contest starring yours truly. Like, how do you artificially plump up numbers?
Well, yeah, believe me, one of the advantages of spending a half century on this planet is I've been through those. I've been down those pathways, and they always lead to the same place. Not the wet t-shirt stuff. And
you were young and needed the money.
Yeah, you're welcome, world, for me never doing that. But yeah, just I know where it leads. It's a cul-de-sac. It's a cul-de-sac of frustration. And you will eventually come back to this. And yeah, if you really want to ask yourself the question, just tell yourself, all right, you don't need money anymore. You have all the money you need to do the things you want to do. What do you do with your day now? And for me, it would pretty much be this. And so that's where I leave it. So it would be what I'm doing right now. So
that's nice. Like,
yeah.
I think a good example, like Roger Craig Smith, Mirage. If you look at, I mean, I'm sure everyone in this chat has, but if you look at his social media, that guy is a camera nerd.
It's pictures of birds.
He's like,
and stars.
He clearly does VO to finance his camera habit, and Roger takes the gnarliest close-ups of birds. He does astronomy photography. He is ridiculous, and he's really good at it.
Yeah.
But he knows photography doesn't pay like VO does. So his measure of success is that he can afford this lifestyle where he's feeding his habit that feeds his soul.
Right.
And it all sounds like very chakra aligning, but honestly, your self-worth has to be built on things that genuinely make you happy. And that is just a more sustainable metric, I find, than how many bookings, how much money, how many viewers, or whatever. I know that all translates into dollars and stuff, but I think one feeds the other, right? So like Roger's an example. I'm sure he figured out his camera hobby before he was making lots of VO money and sort of realized, oh, maybe I should do conventions and stuff because it'll help me buy more lenses.
Right.
And everybody wins. Yeah.
I always treat the stuff that's out of your control that bounces your way as just, that's a bonus. Enjoy the bonus. I like when I do a good job on a say a table read, because that's a live audience. I like when I walk out of a session, or at least at this point when I log off of a session and I know they were happy with what I did. That's an extra for me. So I pat myself on the back and I say, good. If I get a nice residual check, I say, good, that's extra. You weren't planning on that. It's in. Enjoy it. But yes, if you start to tie your expectations to it, therein lies danger. So, yes. Here's one from Eric Tyler. Question: if you had Loba's bracelet, what's the first thing you'd use it to do?
Blinking?
Also his bro Adam, whose birthday is today, loves all your work, as does he. So happy birthday to Adam. So you got Loba's bracelet. Oh, it's time for chicanery. It's time for hijinks.
I'm lazy enough to just like blink from here to like 10 feet that way into the bathroom because that's how I roll. I mean, given the pandemic, like something I had to start doing is like I let my car battery die because I'm a bad adult. Because I was only driving the car to the supermarket to do curbside pickup once a week, and that's
Right.
not enough to maintain a battery. And I took it to the dealership, and they're like, we're replacing batteries like crazy because no one's driving enough. So just to let my battery die a second time, if I had Loba's bracelet, I would, for sanity's sake, I've been telling my husband, like, okay, so I put in the Google Calendar, we're gonna start doing like nonsense drives, just take the dog, shove ourselves in the car early morning, and just like drive to Mulholland. Basically, shorthand, do like stupid, easy scenic drives that fulfill the you must drive the car this long to maintain the battery quota, and then go the hell back home, right? So then that's just also for brain, so I just don't feel like I'm trapped within my own apartment. But I would love to, like, the fact that I am made a little bit extra crazy just thinking I haven't had a vacation in 4 years, so I'm already losing it.
Okay.
So the fact that we're like landlocked and travel outside of cars isn't safe. I would love to just be a blink vacation wherever. How amazing would that be? I would like a vacation. I would like a vacation bracelet, and I would like it now.
Get on it, chat. Get on it, internet. Where's Fryda's vacation bracelet? J-Dog, thanks very much for the compliment. I'm glad you're here, and I'm going to keep doing this stuff. Here's one from Sluggo Snail. Now, this is more getting into canon, and a lot of times I'm asked canon questions, and I just don't know the answer, but this, I don't think there's a wrong answer. Fryda, how do you think Loba sees Mirage? Apparently, there's a lot
of... for time in front of the mirror.
Yeah.
And also, I think Mirage goes through hair product faster than Loba does.
Yeah.
I think they just, I would bet they have like the brother-sister, you're hogging the bathroom type of relationship.
Here's one from, and I love this name, Top Cone Bone 69. Just let's put it out there. Did you take any inspiration from any female character while playing Loba? Saludos desde Tijuana, Mexico.
Saludos, mucho gusto. ¿Qué tal? Well, I mean, Ashley was the first to say, oh yeah, it's Catwoman, but with Batman's background. How good of an Ashley impression is that, by the way? I think I nailed it.
Use your hands a lot.
Ashley.
Yeah.
And like more flailing. Anyway, love you, Ash. So with that so already I was like, okay, so like Catwoman, but I did, even, I'm just like I got into a real, I try not to, I shouldn't apologize for trying to do my job, but I remember like being like, sorry, actor brain, because all story and motivation and crap that I extrapolate from like the story trailers, right?
Right.
Because you're not going to get it in Grenade or Weapon here, like that doesn't tell me, but how do I really feel about my parents? So all the dialogue, what do we call that? Dialogue breakdown, script breakdown, whatever we call that. Came through story trailers. And so I remember it was like just little things that I got to sort of like pick Respawn's brain about. Like, for example, when it was sort of like the line in the the 2D animated trailer where she's saying something about like there was a thief and it was in my blood, but I was doing it to feel something real. I don't remember if that's a line that shipped, but there was something to that effect. And so I said, oh, so does she steal because it's a coping mechanism? Because a lot of people like become addicted to shoplifting or whatever because it's a coping mechanism. It's an adrenaline rush. It helps suppress whatever trauma, PTSD you're not dealing with, or you do it to feel something no different than any other type of addiction. And they were like, oh, we hadn't thought of that. And it triggered a discussion because I'm like, well, that's what I got out of this.
Right.
And I think we ended up like adjusting some of the lines in the trailer over that question of like, well, why is she stealing? Because like clearly for, in D&D context, it's the same thing when you roll. Like I rolled, I'm very proud of myself. I'm starting a little stupid campaign with just me and my husband and my friend in Atlanta who's going to DM for us. And I made my hill dwarf fighter last night. Her name is Blarbara Tumblebum. And Joe, my husband, says he can't pronounce it. I don't care. It's just Blarbara, like Barbara, but Blarbara. Anyway.
Are you using Roll20 or are you using Zoom or I'm fascinated by how people do campaigns now. All right.
My other friend, my husband Joe and my other friend Joe and my other brother Daryl, DM Joe has been running long distance campaigns for his own group. So his problem. I just have to show up and be annoying like an obnoxious player. But in the same way where you know, in your D&D sesh, you do your own little like because you have to fill it out in your character sheet. It's like this is how easy acting is, guys. So when you roll your D&D character, you're like, but why did I become a bard? And why did I come from a background of nobility? Or like, oh wait, did I come from a crime family? And you just sort of like on your own, you don't need to be an actor to do this. You start spiraling. The story tells itself. Improv works the same way, like, or Socratic, whatever you want to call it. One question leads to another question. And when you're an actor, your job is to answer those questions for yourself.
Right.
In the same way, when you're rolling a D&D character, I don't know, why does this character do that? Where did that come from? Why are you a bard? Whatever. Like, you have to answer your own questions. And you're always surprised. People, I think, are surprised that when they like let go control, how much that evolves itself. So with Loba, I had, a series of organic questions that I just free associated my stream of thought, hopefully without being insulting, of like, but why? And so if I'm asking the question, it forces the whole room to answer it for me. Right. And because like I can't take full ownership of the project, Loba is still a property owned and mitigated by Respawn and EA. I have to, because they're the client, unlike a D&D character, which is mine, I have to run their D&D character by them and being like, hey, so here's my question. This is what I think. Do you agree? And we go from there. So it's funny how analogous you can really make D&D role-playing character sheet just be like one-to-one analogous to script breakdown. And answering questions. The information's all there. It's just, it's your choice. It's your problem and your responsibility to decide what it all means. And then you present that back to your D&D group, or in my case, to the client.
This is how gaming has evolved over the course of my lifetime as well. I got into D&D when it first came around. I mean, it technically was created in the early 70s, a very groovy time. And I wasn't exposed to it until about 1980. And I was about 11. And it took a minute for me to get my head around it, because where's the board? Well, there doesn't need to be a board. Where's my piece? Well, you don't necessarily need a piece. This is a sheet of paper. It's like, what, a sheet of paper? What game has a sheet of paper? Well, it's pencil, paper. These are the dice. When I saw the dice, I was in. What is that? That's a 12-sided die. That's a 10-sided die. This is a 20-sided die. You're going to use this the most. And so when I got to discover that I got to use all of the crazy ideas in my head in a game, then Monopoly was fun, but not D&D. And now that it's a way to let people know on the stream, if you guys play D&D, you're already acting. You may not see it that way, but you're acting. That's what we do. Okay, it's D&D, but on a different scale. And
I got the Google alert. I got a hit from a Reddit thread in the D&D subreddit where the question, like, if you put my name in the Reddit search, you'll find it. But the thread was someone asking like, hey, can anyone point me in the direction of like links or guides or YouTubes or whatever, because I'm having a hard time as a DM coming up with voices for my NPCs. How do you all do it? And like somebody linked to my how-to page, so I got the hit. So I jumped in there and like Matt Colville, who's a buddy of mine that I used to work with, Matt's totally like left the gaming industry and runs his own like D&D companion stuff, and he has a huge library of videos on YouTube. Colville, Colville, but if you already play D&D, you probably already know. And he does like a lot of like very intensive, focused on DMs how-tos. And one of them was like coming up with character voices, and he said the same thing I said, which is basically like, it doesn't have to be so hard. You don't have to work so hard. And very often things that we book have like, again, like tiny nipple twiddles. Tiny little changes can make a totally different voice. And not sound like yourself. And you don't have to be self-conscious, overthink it, because I always think of it in terms of like audiobooks, for example. You don't have to make dramatic voice changes for us to understand you're a different character now. So why is it any different for your D&D group? You don't have to put on a show or fireworks. Just even minor changes communicate the change and the difference.
I like to think of it sometimes as, if you're acting, a lot of times people, and I used to do this a lot when I was first starting out, is I would approach it from the outside in and just try and change the voice in a technical way. But really, if you're thinking about acting, you have dialogue. Don't say the words, let them come out. So
Right.
get yourself in that headspace. The words will come out as that character, and the human ear of the audience will do half of the work for you. They'll meet you
Yeah.
halfway. They understand what's going on.
It
So,
shouldn't. It's just this should never feel hard. And like you were saying earlier, like for us, the first inkling of like if you have a difficult time getting through an audition doing a voice, then don't audition with that voice because you can't sustain it for 4 hours.
yeah.
The same should apply to your D&D game. Just make it easy. It's supposed to be fun.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. We had one from further up here. From the Razor Hail. Did you play Apex before you got cast as Loba?
I did. I jumped in before. Well, not before Loba, but before the character was launched. I did jump in for a night, just because like I'm old, so I came out playing the Unreal tournaments and the Doom and the Counter Strike and all these games that we played during the Civil War.
Your LAN parties and such.
We had LAN parties. We drank Mountain Dew all night, but as a group. None of you kids know what I'm talking about. So like I have FPS savvy. I just hadn't gotten around to Apex, so I jumped in, and like I told you yesterday, I got dumped in a map that was really big, and I felt like it would take like 10 minutes to run into another person to shoot them. So I jumped back in since, but I mean to. Also, I kind of like wanted to. At first, I was like, I'll play when Loba's playing, and I'll do the thing that actors do when they troll people. And the reality is because you can't double up on characters in a team. It's like, well, I'm not going to play Loba. Loba's always going to be in rotation with someone else because she's new and popular, so I might as well just wait. And I didn't want to get too clingy with like another character like Mirage or somebody and be like, I don't want to learn another character because I can cheese it with this one. So no, but I will. I mean, hey, we're in lockdown. We can.
Yeah.
Well, I'm personally in lockdown. We can do whatever we want.
What console are you on?
Well, see, because I'm old, Grandmama never made the jump to platforms with shooters, so I still play on PC because.
Okay, I just bought a PC.
I'm old.
Yeah, no, I just bought a PC. I'm still figuring it out, so I know how to get on and play on the PC. I have an Xbox, but once I figure it out, we can game a little bit, and I can either stream it or not stream it. It'll be up to you. We can
I don't mind.
keep it private. Okay, yeah. So we'll figure all that stuff out because it would be fun. And I always play as Pathfinder, and for me, it's easy. I'm a shitty gamer. I'm a horrible gamer. And so I'm just going to play as my guy. I've played the other characters. I'm even worse at them. And so I thought, yeah, it'll be more fun if I just play me. And every time I say something, if I want to say it as Pathfinder, it's fun. But also, after playing Pathfinder for a while, I got to where, geez, I really know how to move this guy a lot. So now I'm kind of stuck. So
That's what I don't want to do. I don't want to get too attached to another character.
Yeah, I'm attached.
Being said that, like, a Loba might not even be, like, you can't, if it's not your play style, you can't get too married to the idea of, like, but I would have picked the character that I did.
Yeah. No, I have to sometimes, well, before Pathfinder got nerfed, I had to sometimes take another character because he was very popular. Since he's been nerfed, I've had no problem taking Pathfinder. Since they extended that zip line or that grapple cooldown, I get Pathfinder all day long.
Whoops.
Yeah, oopsie. Here's one from Datboy. Did Fryda see the season 4 reveal trailer, seeing young Loba? And if you did, what was your thoughts on knowing your character would be officially be revealed a few months later from that point? In other words, the build-up.
I think I would have been more antsy on if I'd been on social media, just because when you are on social media, there is either externally or internally a pressure to promote yourself, and if you get caught in that hamster loop, you start to feel like, oh god, I don't have anything to promote. Oh, am I even an actor anymore? Am I going to work in it? So like not having the pressure to promote was nice. Like, it's completely like not my problem. But it was weird. Like, so for example, I'm on an animated show with Mela, who's Lifeline.
Yeah.
And one of the producers, this show's not out yet, so I can't name drop
Okay.
it. If it was, the show's been announced, but the cast isn't announced, and it's a thing where if I say the thing, then I get in trouble. Anyway, so
I can say it. It's called Juicy Ass and Penis. So just so you guys know, because
Juicy Ass and Penis.
Yeah, these are the
Comedy
two of
Central.
the things you said earlier that flipped the chat, and I said, oh, well, that should be a show name. Yeah.
If I get into it, I'll just start making a jingle. Anyway, so we were waiting to go into session, and one of the producers comes in who's just like a total white guy cap, neckbeard schlub who like typical, like you can tell the gamer, and he just came up and just started going off. Like Mel and I were seated snacking or something, and they just came off just going off to Mel about like, yo, so you're in Apex? I love Apex. I'm playing Apex all the time with my friends. It's so dope. And just like sucked her soul away into like a 30, because I mean, there was nowhere to go. We're trapped in the lobby of this studio, and we don't have to be in there yet. And clearly, he has nowhere better to be. So he's just, yeah, like Apex is so cool. And Mela's like, yeah, this is weird. We're not at a convention.
Yeah, Mela is not. Yeah, she's not really in for a lot of that stuff. She
was very accommodating. She's
yeah.
Like, I mean, what else could she do but agree?
Right.
But anyway, he went off at length. And like I hadn't told anybody that I knew. Like I already was friends with a Laker and friends with Mel. I hadn't told anybody that I was in it, because also, like, we started recording. This is how fine oiled a machine Respawn is, and how specific with their scheduling they are. I believe I started recording Loba in like October of last year.
Wow.
And at that time I was already like, so when is she out? Do you know? And they're like, oh yeah, end of May. And I was like, wow, first of all, amazing, luxurious, which is great. I mean, that's great news, because that means they're going to take all that time to do like play testing and tweaking, and there's time for pickups. And if they change their mind, or if they want to do the whole thing over again because they didn't like it when they took it home, that's a beautiful amount of time to get it right for their own satisfaction before it gets shipped. It's also a really long time for me to sit with the information. So because it was such a long time, I just, I felt like it's not worth telling anybody, because it's so much time for someone to accidentally like slip up and tell other people we're not supposed to tell other people. So like I showed up at the Respawn Christmas party last year, and the girl was like, bitch, why didn't you tell me that you were in? I was like, because of NDAs, and like, what's the point? Like, why hang? I don't tell my husband about a lot of stuff that I'm in, because I don't want to burden him with the information.
Right.
That's my burden.
Yeah.
It's my problem, and it's my problem if it gets out. That's my head that rolls, not anyone else's.
Yeah.
So it was just very funny to like be trapped in this place with Mela while she's having to be like, yeah, Apex, Apex, and I'm like, you guys, I'm in, and then this is why I'm not telling anybody that I'm in Apex. I'm glad it's so beloved, but this looks uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So
the internet makes its own gravy. You don't need to give it much before it runs off and says, look what I just found out. And that must mean more other things that aren't necessarily true, but I'm going to say them anyway.
Yep.
Let's take one more, and then we'll let the lovely and amazing Fryda Wolff go. Plus, I have to go because I have an eye doctor appointment. Yeah. Well, no, it's just this is my checkup, and every checkup you have is running way behind because there's a lockdown and you can't go anywhere. But yes, Orange Jacinto, ¿cómo estás? ¿Qué tal? Apex Actors D&D campaign when? In other words, can we find a few of the other Apex actors that play D&D and get something together? I don't know. Maybe we could. I haven't played in forever. It's been a while.
But like, it's so many people. I almost feel like it would work better if we could do it in person.
Yeah. Well, that'll be a while, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. We could do like small ones or small groups or something.
What's the ideal group size for you for a D&D campaign? I'm usually like 5 people. 4 or 5, yeah.
5 is magical. Like 4 or 5 is magical. 3 is pretty intimate, and then more than that, it's just really rowdy.
There's a lot of NPCs they have to bring in if there's too few people, and then 5 seems to be like when I was a kid. Yeah, I was always a cleric ranger. I don't know why I chose those two things, but I liked being a healer, and I liked being able to run around in the woods and be pretty dexterous and all that. And I would always be some sort of elven cleric ranger. That was me. And I don't know what I would be now. Probably ranger. Just go straight up ranger. So
I laugh because my husband and I made the D&D website has like an awesome character generator, and also like because we had to make our characters level 3, and if you just want to hit random or whatever, but just like the thing where it like spits out all your stats and whatever, and it can be as randomized as you want. We didn't discuss what we were making. We made it independently, and like he made a wood elf ranger, I think, and I made a hill dwarf fighter, and we just made ourselves, is what I'm saying. Like I'm short and round and thick, and he's like tall and long. and as he says, he's from Scotland. He's from where white people were invented.
Yeah.
So we basically made ourselves. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. So if you could Critical Role us into an animated series, it would just be us in our armor being the same and me yelling at him in a bad Scottish accent. Yeah.
Same body art too, oddly enough.
Same body art. Really stupid.
Yeah. How long has it taken you to get all the body art together? My brother is really into it, and I've never had a single tattoo.
Okay, so this is hilarious to me because I got done the last week of February after I had completed my prepper shopping. This artist got like a crazy backlog because he's very good. And there's when I was shopping for tattoo artists, I noticed this thing on Instagram where there's a lot of artists who just put up what we call in the biz flash art. Like they make their own art book. When you walk into a shop and you see art on the wall, that's flash. It's pre-made stuff. You can be like that one. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of artists who make their own really small fridge magnets or big pieces that are flash, and they're like, pick one. And the good artists make really good flash where you're like, that is a better idea than I ever would have come up with. So hysterically, like this is his interpretation of the Hermit card from the tarot, and like it's got the Hermit, and you've got your old man with a skull, and there's all these like skulls and roses and stuff. And now we're in the plague where people are dropping like flies. So I feel weird about it, and I live in a bunker like a mole person. So it was very topical. If you want to look him up, he's Lust and Consume, both on Instagram and his website. Like really, really good tattoo artist in LA. So here's the crazy thing. I have a lot of other work, but it's a lot of filled in color stuff. This is the first black and gray that I've gotten. An hour and 20 minutes, or no, was it 2 hours and 20 minutes? I think it was like, I want to say like 2 hours and 20 minutes, maybe just over 2 hours, which is just nuts. And it's my whole arm.
That's a lot.
I feel naked because it's like a third of my arm, but like he busted it out in barely over 2 hours of bananas.
That is, because usually that looks like it would be more than one session. Usually, no.
And it's because of the lack of color, because it's just line work. To me it looks like a medieval woodcut, which I really like.
Yeah, see,
so the more you know.
That's a whole other conversation we're going to have because you're an Anglophile and so am I. And we could get into an entirely different discussion completely. We had a text thread where we were trying to one-up each other with the obscure English movies that we had seen.
Chris asked if I'd seen Withnell and I. It's funny.
Yeah.
I literally had watched that YouTube documentary on Withnell like the day before, apropos of nothing.
There you go. So, people were asking, are you guys going to do the improv? No, we're not doing the improv this time. We're just sort of keeping it conversational. So we're going to wrap it up because I've got to walk over to I got to walk through the village to get to the eye doctor and put on an H95 mask to get my eyes checked. So there's a little bit of trepidation, but I'm just trusting the science. That's all I can do. Trust the science. This guy's good. He knows what he's doing. So I'm all good for it. So before we go, Fryda, is there anything you'd like to say to the folks on the chat? It's your chance to.
Thank you for coming. This is my first interaction as like, hello, I'm the voice of Loba. So it's nice to say hello and talk about it. And I'm glad that y'all liked her. So just like, thank you. Like, thanks to the Apex community for being, as far as I can tell, mostly chill and being very cool. Thanks for being cool and be excellent to each other.
Yeah. And if we get a chance to get in and play some games, then we'll chat about other stuff too. That's the gaming and chatting is one of my favorite things. We're playing the game, but we're talking about something not even close to what's on the screen. That's the kind of stuff I love doing too. So we'll have to get that. We'll have to get that in there. All right. Well, Fryda, you, like I said, we could still be talking, but we'll just.
It's almost like we would do this for free if it wasn't our jobs.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's almost like that, isn't it?